across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, welcome to Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is the Evening Exchange. It's great to have your company this Thursday evening. There's so much to talk about. In just a couple of minutes, I'm going to give you some exclusive information passed to me by a source in Golders Green about a man who was seized for having a firearm there. The police have finally responded after 4 hours to actually giving us some information about it. Now, what has actually happened there, I'll tell you in a second. We're going to talk about Prince Andrew and the documentation that's come out today. We'll talk about Makerfield, of course, as well. We'll also talk about something that's really, really concerning to me, which is the kind of information that's in the public domain. Well, it was in the public domain, then it was medical records. There are people in the Southport caught up in that Southport attack. There's 3 young girls. Their medical information was accessed by people it shouldn't have been. Now we hear today about victims of Valdo Calocane in Nottinghamshire who have had their information accessed by medical people. 11 people have lost their jobs, quite rightly, because of that. In a world where the government is saying we need to give them more information and they want digital IDs, particularly for health records, should we trust them with that information? And do you trust NHS employees with your information, given that over the course of the last 48 hours, we've had these 2 scandals? We'll also talk about young Britons turning their backs on Starmer's high-tax UK. That is the true story of these immigration figures out today. So much to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 722 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. So I was speaking to one of my sources in Golders Green in London, and that, of course, was where that dreadful attack happened, of the stabbing, a couple of weeks ago. And we know that anti-Semitism is out of control right across the UK. Something happened in Golders Green this afternoon we haven't been told about, and it took 3-4 hours for the Metropolitan Police to even put out a statement about this. They didn't proactively put it out. They didn't send it to all journalists because they were asked about this, and they said, well, there's so many anti-Semitic attacks now that we don't routinely put them out as press releases, telling journalists, telling the public about them. Why is that? Well, they say there are so many of them, therefore we don't put it out as often as they happen. But we do have some information about what happened at 2 o'clock today in Golders Green, and I think it's really disturbing, and I think we should have been proactively told about it by the Metropolitan Police. Around 2 o'clock today, armed officers attended the junction of Woodstock Road and Armitage Road in Golders Green following reports a man had been seen with a firearm in public. Police swiftly arrested a 37-year-old man on suspicion of possessing a prohibited firearm. He was taken into custody where he remains. A suspect item was seized at the scene. Further examination has determined that the item was an air weapon. So this wasn't a pistol, this was an air weapon. A Met spokesman said, "We are aware of the concern this incident is likely to cause, given the appalling events in the local area in recent weeks. Firearms officers rapidly attended the scene, and officers are now working to establish the full circumstances around the incident. We remain in close contact with the local community to offer reassurance alongside our additional patrols in the area." Now, the reason we know about this on Talk, the reason we can tell you this information, is because I know someone who saw it, who says that there were 4 armed response vehicles that came there. Now, obviously, this would have caused a huge commotion in the area. When people in Golders Green in North London are incredibly on edge because of what happened, not just with the stabbing, but also with the Hatala ambulances being burned out a few weeks previously, just a few hundred yards away, why are the police not telling us when these things happen? Why do we and other people have to go to the Metropolitan Police press office and say, we've heard about this, tell us about it? Now, thankfully, this was just an air weapon. Nobody was actually injured by it, that we know of anyway. The 37-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of possessing a prohibited firearm, and he's in custody, as the police have told us. But why is the legwork having to be done here? I think this is really concerning. We'll talk to Isabel Oakeshott in just a second about all the big issues of the day, about Andrew, about the cost of living, about migration numbers, all that kind of stuff. But I just want her reaction now to this. Isabel, am I the only person who thinks we should have been told about this far in advance of knocking the press office's door, and they're routinely not putting this information out now because anti-Semitic incidents are so prevalent? Your reaction, Isabel. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, it's a really serious story, and congratulations to you for your sources and your contacts that enabled you to bring this to light. And I do think it is very worrying if anti-Semitism has become so kind of shrug, routine, just another day in the glorious UK, that this is just not seen as much of a story, and not enough of a story or enough of a source of public interest for it to be brought into public attention. And how many, I guess it begs the question as well, how many more incidents are there?
Yeah.
Really serious incidents that we're not being told about. Funnily enough, I was wondering earlier this week whether the police actually have any kind of statutory duty to publicise incidents, or is it up to the media or members of the public to ask for information if thing has happened? And I don't actually know the answer to that question. Peter, you may know.
I think it's up to them. I think they can decide themselves. They will have internal processes, but I don't think there's any statutory rules around it necessarily.
Well, I think it's a really important question, because I suspect that there are other very sensitive areas of criminality that are also being hushed up.
Oh, totally. Well, we know as well, Isabel, and you and I have talked about this before, about the fact they'll give some information about ethnicity and background of people in some incidents, but then not in others. And that seems a real patchwork too. There has to be total consistency here in terms of what they tell us and when they tell us as well.
Well, there's no consistency either between police forces on some of this stuff. And it's something I'm doing a little bit of work on, and it's far from ready to share. But I think that we need to understand better what is the police policy on actively putting out information about certain types of crimes, whether that's anti-Semitism or whether it's crimes in particularly sensitive political areas, like crimes linked to asylum status, for example. And are they routinely collecting the immigration status of either those that are suspected of crimes or those that are charged? I suspect that this information is not remotely being routinely collected. In fact, there's probably hardly any forces that are routinely collecting it. Yeah. And I think it's really important.
Well, I was on air almost exactly a year ago, Isabel, the 26th of May last year, when there was that dreadful incident in Liverpool, just as they were celebrating having won the Premier League, where the car was driven into people there. And I know there's active proceedings around that, so I don't want to prejudice those in any way. But the point is that we were told very, very quickly that a white British man was the suspect. I remember literally, that was on the Monday, I remember it very, very clearly. And I remember literally on the Saturday, there was a smaller, less serious, still very serious for the people involved, obviously, but there was a less serious incident in Leicester where a man driving a car drove into 3 people. There was a man later arrested for that, and we got his name and ethnicity then, but that wasn't until about the Monday or the Tuesday. And I remember working with my producers then on the Saturday when that incident was initially reported, asking Leicestershire Police and saying, what is the ethnicity and the background of the suspect, of the person who you have are questioning on this? And they wouldn't tell us. Now, we later found out it was a Sikh man in Leicester. It doesn't really matter, but the point is that that could have been that information could have been pertinent to what we were talking about. Instead, Leicester Police in that particular incident didn't tell us what was happening, whereas we were told pretty instantly. I remember I was on air with Kevin O'Sullivan. I did both my own show and then Kevin as well. And within about an hour, we were told with Liverpool that the suspect was a white British man. There has to be consistency across this.
There has to be, and I think it has to not just lean towards disclosure, but just have a clear policy of full disclosure. But I would like to see it go further and be not just about ethnicity, but about, crucially, about asylum and immigration status. I think that's really, really important.
I think you're absolutely correct with that. When I'm told that with these bits of information, it's in an if-ask basis. So if the people are asked about it, they will be told. I mean, given how easy it is to publish information, I'm not talking about flooding journalists' inboxes with an email every single time, but you may at least put it on your Twitter or your website. Anyway, we'll return to this. And Isabel, I look forward to the findings of your reporting that you referenced there, and no doubt we'll talk about that more. You've referenced there and mentioned immigration status and asylum status. Today, of course, Keir Starmer said he was proud of immigration numbers. Let's see what he said.
Very pleased to see the migration figures this morning come down significantly, and that's obviously on the top of the news about waiting lists last week, where we had a record drop in waiting lists, and of course the news about growth, the money we've got in our economy, the fastest growing economy in the G7. So that's all really good news within about a week or so, and of course today we're announcing cost of living package for the summer for families. So I'm really proud that we're getting on and delivering. Thank you very much.
Is it all too little too late, do you think, Prime Minister?
This is really good delivery. This is really significant. So I'm very, very pleased. All of those figures are good news. Taken together, they're a very strong package.
The government also announcing today discounts on family attractions. Rachel Reeves talking about the summer and how it's all going to be wonderful. This is what the Chancellor said.
I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well. These changes will apply across the UK, from the start of the Scottish school holidays on the 25th of June and run until the end of school holidays in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on the 1st of September.
Let's start with the immigration figures, Isabel. There's a lot hidden here, isn't there? Especially given how many people are leaving the UK for tax reasons. Perhaps you could give us your insight into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be churlish about this. You know, those figures, I was really quite pleasantly surprised when I heard 171,000. I mean, that is so much better than where we were a few years ago. But nonetheless, these are still extra people coming in. This isn't like it's, you know, when we say it's fallen, it's not fallen below zero to a net negative. It is still another 171,000 people being added to our population. And that is only the statistics that the government has managed to collate. I don't trust the statistics. We know that there are huge numbers trickling through. If you can have huge numbers trickling, there are significant numbers coming through in the back of lorries, in cars, not just the small boats, which we focus so much of our attention on, but the old-fashioned methods of breaking into our country. And these people simply slip into the black economy. And we don't know just the scale of the number of people who are just simply undocumented, not properly registered at all in our country, but I suspect it's vast. And you asked about the number of people leaving. That's so significant because not just in a sheer kind of quantum of people leaving, but the fact that we're swapping in general, people coming in with very low skills or no skills at all in the case of a lot of the channel migrants, with people who are the wealth creators and the entrepreneurs, and crucially young people who've just decided, you know what, working in the UK right now just doesn't stack up. It's too difficult to get a job. And if you can land a job, just look how much money goes out the window to a government that squanders it.
So many people realising that the lower taxes in other places, and not just places where there's zero taxation, but just even slightly lower tax elsewhere in Europe and so on, is a big, big issue. What do you make of these summer discounts, Isabel? Is this going to mean everybody has an absolutely amazing summer because they have slightly more money in their pocket?
Well, again, I mean, it was quite cheery, wasn't it? I don't just want to be negative about everything and say it's nothing. And, you know, I don't recall a government doing this before, not quite like it. I mean, we had the Eat Out to Help Out during COVID. So I think these are really nice gestures. But what sticks in the throat for me is to hear Keir Starmer yet again talking about how proud he is. I mean, I've never known a Prime Minister talk so endlessly about how proud he is, with so little to be proud of. Going on about how we're the fastest growing economy in the G7, something that Rachel Reeves keeps prattling on about. I mean, 0.6% growth. In many countries, that would be a source of absolute humiliation and shame.
The G7 as well. I mean, having the greatest growth in the G7 is a bit like saying you're the tallest of Snow White's housemates. I mean, it is not something to be massively proud of.
No, I mean, these EU economies are grinding along and really struggling. Germany and France in particular, really, really struggling. So they're grasping for things that are positive to say. And I just don't think 0.6% growth is something positive, especially in a week that we found out that unemployment is spiked right up to 5%.
And having an impact on the 500,000 illegal immigrants in the capital, according to the Telegraph. 1 in 13 people in London is an illegal immigrant. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about Prince Andrew and the revelations today. The Queen pushing for him to be this international envoy way back in 2000. Robin Cook, there's a name from the past, the Foreign Secretary, saying that he should be utilised as a trade envoy. What do you make of these revelations today?
Well, I've long been very interested in Prince Andrew and what he did with that role and how he used it to basically line his own and his family's pockets. And there was another revelation that came out today about how he sort of privately indicated that he wanted to go to more sophisticated countries, whatever that means. But my own research on Prince Andrew and the cache of emails that I obtained between him and the financiers that he worked with during his time when he was a trade envoy suggested he was happy to go anywhere. Some really questionable places with questionable regimes, as long as it looked like it might generate him a pile of cash.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for that, Isabel Oakeshott there, international editor here at Talk. Thank you to Joanna in Salisbury. He says, hi, Cardi P. Hi, Joanna. So 15% discounts on attractions in August. Like, that isn't going to go wrong. Few will visit attractions the rest of the summer, and there'll be huge crowds in August. My medical data safe, just like 19 million had data access in France last week. Then the government are selling our data too. No way to digital ID, says Joanna. And Margaret in Birmingham says, Starmer is a top-class hypocrite. I've just read he's going to campaign in Makerfield for Andy Burnham. He blocked him months ago. Well, there you go. Reform will win hands down. Well, it appears, certainly with the polling that we have, that it is a straight battle between Reform UK and the Labour Party and Andy Burnham. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. We certainly will have nominations closing on Tuesday. We know there are candidates like Rebecca Shepherd, apologies, for Restore Britain. We know that the Green Party's candidate lasted only a day before withdrawing, and they're going to have to find a new candidate. We know that the Mulroney Looney Party are running a candidate as well, and there's going to be someone dressed as a fox as well because of animal welfare issues. By-elections often attract quite a number of different people to them. We'll have full coverage of that, of course, on the 18th, and indeed when the result comes out on the 19th of June, so it's all happening very soon. But the nominations go in between now and Tuesday, and then after Tuesday we'll know exactly who is standing and for whom in total. Right then, we will go to the debate desk in a second with the journalist Candice Holdsworth and research associate at the Adam Smith Institute, Viggo Turling. Tell us your thoughts on any of these stories. Give me a shout, give me a ring. We'll have some calls, maybe even with Candice and with Viggo as well, actually. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Mal, who says Starmer's claim that they have reduced immigration is true on one side and nonsense on the other. That's because anyone with a valid reason to come and work in the UK doesn't want to, because we are a basket case. Isolate the legal and illegal immigration figures, and I bet that they will show an increase in the illegals and a decrease in the legals, is what Mal thinks. Paul in Belfast says reducing our free fares for kids will only encourage kids to travel alone or with their young friends. Parents, the most expensive part of a family fare, will still be charged full price. All this will do is be encourage children to travel, with paedophiles and grooming gangs on the lookout for lots of kids on trains and buses travelling with their friends, says Paul in Belfast. I mean, I know what you mean, Paul. I do want kids to have a nice summer and to be able to go out and about with their friends if they're old enough and responsible enough in order to do so. I just remember even from, I mean, it seems crazy now, but from the age of, I think I was about 10 when I first got a front door key and would come home and be on my own for a couple of hours. It would never happen now, but it was absolutely fine then, and it was judged a perfectly normal way to live in our very, very safe village that I was privileged to grow up with in Northern Ireland. I should say I'm actually heading back there for a few nights, and I won't be here tomorrow or Monday. I know Charlie Rowley is in tomorrow night, but I will be here on Tuesday and then right through the rest of next week. So I'm looking forward to that, but I am taking a break for a couple of days, but I'm here very much until 10 o'clock this evening in body, mind and spirit. And I'm delighted that Candice Holdsworth, the political commentator, and Viggo Turling, the research associate at the Adam Smith Institute, are with me on the debate desk this evening. How are you doing?
Good.
Good to see you both. Let's start with the Prince Andrew revelations. Viggo, what are your thoughts on what we know now that we didn't this morning?
Yeah, the big headline today has been that the Queen was reportedly very keen to have Andrew play this role as a trade envoy that he did from 2011 onwards. Look, I don't like how the media have framed this. I think the media is trying to place some sort of blame on the Queen's shoulders, in my opinion. And I would just say this: I think it's natural that the Queen wanted a prominent senior member of the royal family to play a greater role, and a role that was good.
Also, it was 26 years ago, and we didn't know the stuff we know now about Epstein. Although it is interesting because the role of the Queen is certainly being re-evaluated in all of this, especially when it comes to the money that was given to Virginia Giuffre, for example. So, I mean, that we think was her money. She was very old at the time, but old people still have judgment. So perhaps our view of the Queen is changing. What do you think, Viggo?
I think the Queen was a fantastic stateswoman. I think we shouldn't be retrospective with her reputation. Obviously, all figures of authority should be questioned, but I think it was natural for the Queen and good for the monarchy that that case was settled out of court, and the Queen paid for it with her personal funds and not taxpayer money. I think that's important to note.
Candice?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I found the whole thing underwhelming. I don't think it really told me anything new, that something needed to be found for Andrew Nothing with too much responsibility. I mean, he said, I'm not interested in the detail, just like update me occasionally.
Yeah, there was this particular board that he said, oh, I don't want to sit in on all these boring board meetings, just give me a general update.
Yes, and he liked to go to very sophisticated countries, not boring countries. So yeah, so for me, I mean, that was all pretty obvious. Yeah,
can we read anything into the fact that he wanted to go to the Philippines, for example? I mean, is that something, is that too tinfoil hatted?
I don't know, for me, I try to resist personally a lot of the conspiratorial stuff around Epstein. I mean, he 100% was convicted. We know he was, as was Ghislaine Maxwell. But a lot of the other stuff sort of swirling around it, no, a lot of it is just accusation that hasn't yet been proven. Even with Prince Andrew, I mean, I would stand on principle with that. I would say that, you know, presumption of innocence is still really important.
Errors of judgment, though?
Oh, for sure, yes. I mean, he continued his friendship with Epstein even when he knew what had happened. And I mean, for someone in his position, he should have been way more discerning, absolutely, because he has brought disrepute onto the royal family, absolutely. But I would say that we still need to establish exactly what happened. And that's not clear to me. I feel like there's this little bubble online that just assumes that they know everything about this matter. And that he's totally guilty without actually providing hard evidence. And I think we need to maintain that standard. I think society needs that. Otherwise we become a bit more medieval, right? Where you just point fingers.
It's a fair point. Do you think that, I mean, the thing is, there'll be so much more to come on this as well. All the Mandelson revelations will come out. There'll be far more information in the public domain actually in a week or two when that'll come out. But do you, Viggo, honestly believe the Queen bears no responsibility for Andrew's behaviour and the lifetime of support that she gave him?
Of course, the Queen plays some degree of responsibility. I think I was on the debate desk a few weeks ago and we were talking about parental responsibility in you know, a child's behaviour. And yes, of course, the Queen as Prince Andrew's mother, as the head of the crown, of the monarchy, obviously bears some responsibility for Andrew's behaviour, absolutely. But to frame her in the way that I think she's been framed in the media today is just wrong. Okay. Andrew was an adult and he was responsible for his own actions.
Okay, we'll talk more about that in a second. I wonder what you think about how the Queen is being portrayed today. Should we just leave her in peace and leave their memory and let her rest in peace? Although as a public figure, obviously history exists. There is examination of all of this. We're going to be talking about this a little bit more later in the programme, but I'd be really interested to hear what our viewers and listeners think. 0344 499 1000. I want to talk about these holiday discounts next. We'll do that after the break, so stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Rob in Burnley's been in touch, and thank you for your WhatsApp, 0344 499 1000. Send it through WhatsApp, it comes up on the screen in front of me. I hope the palace aren't trying to deflect towards people who can't answer for themselves, like Queen Elizabeth II. The brazenness of this cover-up to then further delay these files, then suggest that further redactions could be made against Parliament's will to protect the reputation of the monarch. Yes, Darren Jones did say that on Wednesday. Rob, I didn't hear him say that, but I don't doubt you, and that is a very interesting point as well. It shouldn't be about reputation, it should be about the truth. I don't want things that are going to be difficult for us intelligence-wise, but if it's embarrassing, it should be in the public domain. We shouldn't necessarily say that people's embarrassment is a factor here, as it sometimes is. Paul has been in touch and says all the things Rachel Reeves said today are just trying to buy votes in the Makerfield election. Well, let's see what the Chancellor has been saying about this, actually, specifically about all these discounts and things that we will be getting, or families will be getting over the summer.
I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well. These changes will apply across the UK from the start of the Scottish school holidays on the 25th of June and run until the end of school holidays in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on the 1st of September.
I don't quite know who to go to first, the mother of 3 children and the person who was a child until recently. Sorry, Vigo, couldn't resist it. Candice, you have 3 kids.
Yes.
Tell me, will you welcome this? What do you think?
I mean, it just seems like tinkering around the edges to me. I mean, people my age with children, I mean, have far deeper problems when it comes to managing the cost of living. Number one, mortgage costs. Energy costs. I mean, those are huge.
But this
those
is not
are
a
massive.
bad thing for you if you want to take your kids out during the summer.
I mean, it's okay, but it's not going to really touch sides. I mean, not really, no ways. I mean, there are much deeper structural issues. I mean, I hear something like that and I go, yeah, it's not going to move the needle. And I don't think anyone my age thinks that with children. Everyone is sort of drowning in mortgage costs and also very high tax. I mean, you know, your mid to late 30s, you are paying a lot more tax. And you know that you could use that on your children. That money you could spend on your children, but instead the state is dispensing it for goodness knows who.
I just refuse to believe you're in your late 30s. You're only 23, as we know.
I'm 29, yeah.
Of course, forever. Vigo, what do you make of this?
Look, on the question of whether this will help people like Candice, I'm very unconvinced, primarily because the economic evidence surrounding whether this VAT decrease will actually lead to a decrease in prices is quite weak. But also, Rachel Reeves is spending money, as she usually does, and she's not addressing the root cause of the issue, which is her terrible policies and how they're damaging the hospitality sector. Like, you know, the increase in employer national insurance. Everyone agrees that was a mistake. That's what she should be touching, not policies like these.
Tell me your thoughts, Vigo, actually, on Reeves. Has she shown weakness or a lack of conviction by bowing to pressure from supermarkets and the grocery price cap? That seemed to fizzle out rather dramatically.
Yeah, I don't think, whether she's shown weakness or not, I think every member of the Labour front bench has shown weakness from time to time during their 2 years in government. They're not that decisive, to be honest. But the fact that she's caved on this is fantastic. Price controls are not a good thing to have in any economy. There's a fantastic book called 40 Centuries of Price Controls, which essentially showed that price controls have never worked, ever, and to instate them would be a massive mistake for our economy and for our country.
Yeah.
We're getting some calls on this. I wonder if we can get Nigel in London on the line who's called in. Can we just give him a ring and see if we can have a chat with Candice and with Vigo? I mean, do you think the Chancellor really understands what families are going through? She wants people to have a slightly better summer, of course, but you're saying it won't really touch the sides, but it's not something that's going to make life more difficult, is it?
No. Look, people I speak to in Labour say that they do have some understanding of what's going on. Like, they do want to make it easier for younger people, people with families, but I just feel like they're not bold enough. You know, they don't do the things that would really make a difference, like completely changing the planning system, you know, improving housing. I mean, at the moment where I live, like on the outskirts of London, the average age is about 35, so people with families are just moving further and further out of London. Loads of schools are closing down in central London because people can't afford to raise a family there. Those are the much bigger issues, right? Like, those are the things that are going to make a material difference. Most people I know can't afford to upsize their home. because the next level up is like £1.5 million. I mean, that wasn't the same for our parents. Our parents could reliably look forward to improving their standard of living, whereas I feel like people our age are just getting used to lower and lower living standards. And yeah, it's nice to go out, it's nice to take your kids, but actually you want to have hope for the future. You want to be able to make the big changes, and I just don't think they're capable of doing that.
David in Leicestershire has been in touch and says, love your show, thank you, David. Reeves is acting like a Roman emperor, distract the plebs with some cheap entertainment, bread and circus, as some would say. Nothing meaningful. This government is the end of the left forever. They're utterly disgusting, says David. Nigel in London, we've got him on the line. You're on with me, Nigel, but also Viggo and Candice on the debate desk. What would you like to say about this?
Well, good evening, Peter. Good evening to your panel.
Good evening.
I wanted to say simply, is if I was a family, I'm not interested in saving 15% VAT on Legoland tickets, which start at £32 and go up and up and up. I'm interested in saving money on groceries, my everyday essentials, and my heating and gas bills. And I think Rachel Reeves has got it wrong. There are not very many families on a low income can afford to take mum and dad, their 2 or 3 kids to Legoland for a day out without refreshments, which are going to cost much more money on top.
Well, indeed, although we know from reporting in The Spectator that we talked about a few weeks ago that actually, if you're on universal credit, there are huge discounts. Well, this will help some people in some ways. Is a little bit of help better than no help, Nigel? Or do you think it's even possible to bring down those energy bills? And is that even the role of the government to do so?
Well, it's interesting, Peter. You mentioned about the universal credit. I think some of these attractions are about £5, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
I read, which is hugely discounted. I think Rachel Reeves needs to realise that everything is a sweetener and it's a headline and a clickbait grab. I think that if I was Rachel Reeves, I want to be more encouraging to families and say, let me help you with the cost of living. Fuel is nearly 160, 170.
But that's a lot more expensive, Nigel. I'm not saying she shouldn't do that. I'm simply saying that that's a lot more expensive. This is 300 million quid, which sounds like a lot, but really isn't when it comes to public spending.
No, it isn't. But I think she should do something a little bit more for families because, as I say, there will be families who are going to go to these attractions and enjoy them, but they're more interested in everyday essentials. And, of course, to heat their home when...
So do you then support what she did with the groceries then, trying to get those staples like milk, eggs and bread? I foolishly said the other day that Iceland didn't sell those. Of course they do. And I apologise for doing so. A couple of people pointed that out on Twitter. I can't get everything right, unfortunately. But, I mean, do you think, Nigel, that those attempts anyway, which seemed to have fizzled out, were worthwhile?
Well, I don't, because do you remember years ago that term stagflation?
Yeah.
And that was it the 70s or the 80s where there was some sort of control, and it made things actually considerably worse.
Nigel, listen, thanks for your views on that. I appreciate that. That's Nigel in London there. What do you make of what he said there, Viggo?
Well, I think he raised some important issues. I think what I would say, and as I said before, I think on the issue of price controls, it's really important that we remember that they have simply never worked. And I'd encourage Nigel to read the book I referenced, 40 Centuries on Price Controls and Wage Inflation. It's fantastic that Reeves fell back on this issue, and I hope we start seeing more sensible economic policy in the future.
Yeah. Candice?
Yeah, look, I mean, you know, what he said is absolutely right. I think people are very worried about groceries. I mean, I've seen my grocery bill just quadruple. Things are just getting more and more and more expensive. Yeah. Although some have said to me, compared to places like the US, like actually our groceries are quite cheap.
Well, I was talking to the Paris correspondent of The Times the other day, actually. He said he comes here and he can't believe how cheap food is.
Yes, and you get egg shortages in France, and people are completely tolerant of it, but we're not here. We would never tolerate that. Though I do know they're very, very worried about possible CO2 shortages in the summer if the Straits of Hormuz stay closed, which could mean that we have shortages of things like fresh meat. I don't know if that will happen.
But you know that French people only need 1 egg each. Do you know why?
Why?
Because in France 1 egg is enough. Stay with us here on Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Keir Starmer was talking about migration figures today. He's very happy with them. We've already had a chat with Isabel Oakeshott about it. We think about 75,000 young people have left the UK because perhaps of the tax regime or just the cost of living. The Prime Minister, though, was very happy with those figures today. This is what he told ITV News.
Pleased to see the migration figures this morning come down significantly, and that's obviously on the top of the news about waiting lists last week, where we had a record drop in waiting lists, and of course the news about growth, the money we've got in our economy, the fastest growing economy in the G7. So that's all really good news within about a week or so, and of course today we're announcing cost of living package for the summer for families. So I'm really proud that we're getting on and delivering. Thank you very much.
Is it all too little too late, do you think, Prime Minister?
No, this is really good delivery. This is really significant. So I'm very, very pleased. All of those figures are good news. Taken together, they're a very strong package.
All of those figures are good news. Taken together, they're a very strong package, is what the Prime Minister said. Quite a lot of reaction to this, including from Penny in Essex, who says Reeves doesn't give a toss about children having a lovely summer. She's just touting for votes and making it look how wonderful she is. She's totally out of her depth. A dreadful woman who cannot pull the wool over her eyes, in Penny's opinion. Faye, also in Essex, says Rachel Reeves doesn't get it at all. It's what we're not left with at the end of the month. Not the discounts and eating out and attractions. Lower the cost of being alive. It can't be that hard to work out, says Faye. Neil in Stoke-on-Trent says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Neil. All this talk about the reduction to 5% VAT on children's meals will not make much difference, as a large number of restaurants attract families already by offering a kids eat free deal. That's a very interesting point too. Quite a lot in the Queen. I think I'll come back to those in a minute or two. But Robert says, these holiday discounts, I'm an older gentleman, I'm disabled with no children. My nearest zoo and theme park is over 30 miles away. So how does this help me? Debbie says, if we are the best in the G7, then why do we need to get closer to Europe? We're doing okay without them. On the immigration figures, Viggo, I wonder what you think, especially given how many young people, and people kind of your age and a bit older, are actually leaving this country.
Yeah, firstly, Peter, credit where credit's due. I think we're seeing...
Can you just turn your thing down a little bit? It's just squeaking a little bit. Is it his earphones or what is it? Yeah, if you could just... there's a little volume control there. Yeah, there's just a little bit of squeaking there. Sorry, Viggo. Yeah,
no worries. Credit where credit's due. The PM, the Labour Party, their policies are starting to produce some positive effects, although some. And you raise a very important point. Yes, immigration is down, net immigration, but 200,000 young people are leaving the country. We need to focus on that.
How do we work out that figure, Viggo? Because I've seen 75,000, I've seen 200,000. Where do we get that from?
Well, that's just ONS data. The ONS, the ONS has
Office of National Statistics.
Exactly,
Okay,
the Office of National Statistics. They collate data on immigration and immigration across all age groups and also professions, non-EU, EU nationals, so nationality as well. So we get that figure, and we see that young people are disproportionately leaving this country, and that's important because they're the future. And if they don't stay, then we have a real issue going forward.
Candice, what do you make of these figures? Because certainly Rishi Sunak would say that this vindicates his policy. They're down to 171 net migration, but the hidden bit of it is the fact that people are leaving. There's still plenty of people coming here, fewer than previously, but there are lots of people leaving because they just don't like this country and the way it works and operates, particularly when it comes to what we've been talking about, the cost of living.
Yeah, I think, yes, that's it. That's the key point, that I think these figures are skewed by the enormous amounts of people leaving, and the ONS actually had to revise that upwards. They had no idea that 250,000 people have been leaving this country, actually since before Labour. That's the interesting thing. It's not just to do with policies, you know, as much as I'm very critical of it, this existed before. And I think a lot of it is to do with the very, very deep systemic issues that are just sort of taking out all the British Prime Ministers that we've had since, what, like 2016?
Yeah. Could be on our 7th soon.
I know. Look, I need more granular data. I need to know exactly who is leaving, why, where they're going, what their long-term plans are. You know, the thing is as well, what complicates it is that the Anglosphere countries we all kind of move to each other's countries depending on how things are going. Like, we have that option, right? Like, the French don't necessarily have that option. They know there's not many other French-speaking countries that they can move to, whereas for us, we can go to Canada, we can go to Australia, we can go to New Zealand, and vice versa. So I think there is always quite a lot of movement between these countries, but I want to know, you know, are we at a very unique moment where, because anecdotally, I think we can all say the young are actually quite pessimistic about things
Well, let's speak to one of them who is an immigrant. What do you make of it?
Well, I am born here.
Oh, you're born here. Sorry,
born here.
Your family emigrated.
Exactly. I'm a second-gen immigrant. But what we're seeing, talking about the granular evidence, what we're seeing is, for example, second-gen immigrants like me, but Polish second-generation immigrants.
You're Swedish, is that correct?
I'm Swedish.
Exactly.
Right, okay. Exactly. Born to 2 Swedish parents, but those in this country born to 2 Polish parents. Obviously, we had lots of Polish immigration to this country. What we're seeing now is that they are being born here, and then they're moving back to Poland to seek jobs there. Now, the Poles do a lot of good work in this country, and it's a shame to lose them. We're also seeing British nationals, young British nationals, leaving for studies and staying an extra year now. So we have a real youth emigration crisis.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Faye in Essex has been in touch and says, I am currently working on my 2nd job to keep my head above water financially while listening to your great show. Well, Faye, I hope we're helping pass the time, whatever you're up to. Good for you for doing that, and that is, I mean, these are tough times, and I'm delighted that you can message in and that we're perhaps keeping you company as you're doing that 2nd job and keeping your head above water, and good for you. You're clearly an absolute grafter, as are so many of the people who watch and listen to this programme. There'll be people driving lorries right now who have working long hours, who have us on in their cab. There'll be people who are doing extra jobs in the evening like Faye, or people going out to do a bit of extra manual work, or delivery drivers. There'll be people sitting at home who've had a very long day who are watching or listening to this programme, and there are lots of people who really do work very, very hard in this economy, and it's great to have you as our viewers and listeners. We never ever forget that we're not just talking to nobody, we're talking to people who have real lives, real concerns, and that's why we love hearing from you. And do get in touch, 0344 499 1000, like Andy has. He says it's all right, good old Rachel lowering the prices on the attractions, however, how much more does it cost in today's climate to drive to them, is a very good point as well. Frank says, tell your silly commentator my parents couldn't afford to buy their own, so no, our parents didn't always have it better. If we stop immigrants coming in, it might have the indigenous population's chance to buy a house. Silly woman, sorry if I misgendered her. You haven't been misgendered. I'm not sure you're silly, but you're definitely a woman. I think you're very happy about that, Candice.
I mean, I think that the data just speaks for itself. I mean, yeah, my family also, actually, no, he's absolutely wrong, because my family came from the working classes and they did improve their standard of living. So, no, I'm not silly. I know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Speaking of being a woman, trans issues are something that has come up yet again, and now we know that Bridget Phillipson, who's not just the Education Secretary when she's sort of hanging out with Gemma Collins, but she is saying that trans people are still protected as single-sex space guidance has been laid. This has been coming for a very long time. It's finally here. What do you make of it, Candice?
It just feels like a regression to me. It feels like we're still having the same discussion since 2020. I thought the Supreme Court ruling had settled it. But no, because I think actually for a lot of people on the left, and particularly the Labour left, they're very ideological about this, and they still haven't quite accepted the argument that the gender-critical feminists have been trying to make, that we need to protect female-only spaces, that biological sex is a real thing, and they just haven't been able to accept it. So I feel like we just keep having the same discussion over and over and over and over, and we keep making the same arguments.
Viggo, do you feel there's a sort of Groundhog Day aspect to this?
Not, I suppose I understand the argument, but I actually think this guidance is very important because you can't expect all businesses to interpret the law in the same way. So therefore they need government to explain to them how to interpret situations around trans rights, for example. And the guidance is actually really compromising. It both respects trans persons' right not to be discriminated against by saying they must have access to some toiletry facility, obviously, whereas also making it clear that a trans woman shouldn't be in a man's bathroom or vice versa. So yeah, I think the guidance is important.
Okay, I just want to respond to what Phil in Portsmouth has said. Let me just get this info on my phone from my source, actually, because he's referenced something that we talked about a little bit earlier on in the programme. That's what happened in Golders Green. He says, with regards to the police not saying what's going on in Golders Green, my daughter, who lives just down the road from where the ambulances were set fire to, as a father, I want to know. She's not Jewish, but her safety still scares me a lot as a dad, says Phil in Portsmouth. Well, Phil, this is another attack, or sorry, it's not an attack, it's an attempted well, it's an incident anyway in Golders Green, and I was told about this earlier by a source who is there, and finally we got some information out of the police after about 3 or 4 hours, and I'll just read you what the police have given us, the Metropolitan Police. Around 2 o'clock today, armed officers attended a junction of a place called Woodstock Road and Armitage Road in Golders Green. That won't mean a huge amount to people who don't live there, and you know, obviously we're a huge country, but it is in Golders Green, not a huge number of yards away from where the ambulances were set on fire and where that stabbing happened as well. I don't know the complete geography, but Golders Green isn't a huge place. Following reports, a man had been seen with a firearm in public. Police swiftly arrested a 37-year-old man on suspicion of possessing a prohibited firearm. He was taken into custody, where he remains. A suspect item was seized at the scene. Further examination has since determined that the item was an air weapon. A Met spokesman said, "We are aware of the concern this incident is likely to cause given the appalling events in the local area in recent weeks. Firearms officers rapidly attended the scene, and officers are now working to establish the full circumstances around the incident. We remain in close contact with the local community to offer reassurance alongside our additional patrols in the area." So Phil, I'm very happy to sort of update you on that. If you scroll back on YouTube, or you go on our catch-up service and see the very start of the programme, there's a bit more information about it there, and reaction from Isabel Oakeshott as well. We'll not talk about it too much more now. I think I've given you the details, but the thing that really concerns me is the fact the police aren't telling us about these things proactively. They're saying they're doing it in response to journalistic inquiries, and they're also saying that there are so many of these incidents now that actually they're not going to do that proactively. A breaking story in the Telegraph now. Angela Rayner embroiled in an election fraud row. When I have more information about that, I will bring it to you. But as you know, throughout this story, throughout this programme, quite a lot of the papers now put stuff online beforehand. As soon as I have more information on that, I'll bring it to you. I just want to talk about something that happened in Israel as well. This is one of the ministers in Netanyahu's government. His coalition and some of those people that he's with are not very nice at all. And Minister Ben-Gvir did this.
ברוכים הבאים לישראל, אנחנו בעלי הבית. ככה צריך. ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי. כן. זיכוי, כל המטרה כאן זה לראות שאין אנשים בתהליך. לא להתרגש מהצעקות שלהם, לא להתרגש.
So there are pro-Palestinian activists who've gone across on this flotilla, and the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, put out footage himself on his social media showing him taunting activists, kneeling with hands tied behind their backs. And the UK had summoned Israel's top diplomat, the Chargé d'Affaires, Daniela Grudzki-Etzkind, over the incident. The Foreign Office said the move reflected the UK's strong condemnation of Ben-Gvir's conduct in taunting those involved in the global Smud flotilla. Now, I think the flotilla is a really stupid idea. I think it doesn't help any Gaza citizens at all, but this is really unseemly, horrible behaviour by a nasty man who is part of the Israeli government. Viggo, what did you make of it when you saw the footage?
I was deeply disappointed. Look, I may say something controversial now, especially if you're for some fans of Eurovision, But Israel is a hugely important country. It's a strong democracy in the Middle East, and there aren't that many of those. And I'm inclined to support the state of Israel.
Me too.
But I believe their government and some of its ministers and even its prime minister continually shoot themselves in the feet. Because when you see clips like those, how can you publicly go out and continue supporting the Israeli
feel exactly the same. I agree with every single word you've just said. Candace?
Yeah, I mean, he's a controversial figure in Israel himself. I mean, my Israeli friends who are more centre-right, liberal, moderate, they don't agree with him. I mean, you know, he's like very much on the extreme fringe. I mean, he didn't actually serve in the army because of his politics. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they know, like, I think Netanyahu has said, like, Israel is losing that social media war. He comes along, he does stuff like this. It's so counterproductive, and it's going to be used by their enemies.
Yeah.
Having said that, however, you know, those people on the Gaza flotilla are incredibly hostile to the state of Israel,
well,
and we mustn't lose sight of that.
Well, we mustn't lose sight of that, but they also don't deserve to be belittled by someone who is not in the situation they're in. We're going to talk a little bit later on in the programme. We just don't have time right now to talk about the medical records and the absolute disgrace over those, because I want to bring in this breaking news. We will talk about the medical records, but I just want to bring you this breaking news on Angela Rayner. This is Angela Rayner embroiled in a row linked to alleged electoral fraud at her local council. 4 men and a woman have been arrested. That happened this morning on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud, according to Greater Manchester Police. The alleged plot was reportedly carried out by people associated with Thameside Labour Group, with one discussion said to have taken place in Angela Rayner's kitchen. The former Deputy Prime Minister says the developments have nothing to do with her, and any suggestion she has been involved in or aware of any alleged wrongdoing is completely baseless. Well, we'll continue to talk about that and get more detail on that, but very, very interesting, certainly in the context of the Labour leadership election. For the meantime, I want to say a huge thank you to Viggo and to Candace. They are, of course, Viggo Turling. There was a lovely message that came in from someone who's a big fan of yours, Viggo, and plenty of fans of yours, Candace, including me. Candace Holdsworth, political commentator, Viggo Turling, who's a research associate at the Adam Smith Institute. Loads more to report. We'll get back to that Angela Rayner story as well. We'll talk about Andrew and all the rest of it. Reeves, Adrian in Woking says, is amputating your right arm while giving your left hand a manicure. That's an arresting image, let me tell you. And Dave in New Zealand says, I left New Zealand in 2001 under the premise of, if I'm going to live in a third world country, I may as well have good weather. The thought of returning, but after a short stay last year, there's no way it's that bad. And lots of people commenting on my joke as well. In France, 1 egg is enough. The word for egg in French is œuf, so 1 egg is enough. So that was the joke which Sharon didn't quite get. But hopefully you'll get it now, Sharon. It's still terrible. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. This is the Evening Exchange on Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Some breaking news in regard to Angela Rayner. The Telegraph is reporting that she has been embroiled in an election fraud row. She denies any wrongdoing. We'll speak to the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell in just a second about that and many other things the government are up to in the Makerfield by-election. We know that it's happening on the 18th of June and that nominations close on Tuesday. The Green candidate didn't even last a whole day before withdrawing. We'll talk as well about the Queen. Plenty of people getting in touch about Queen Elizabeth and the role she may or may not have had in regard to Andrew. We've more information about him becoming an international trade envoy today. And data is a big issue. Yeah, we know that the government has so much of it. We know that digital ID is something that was in the King's speech just a few days ago, last week actually, 7 days ago. So should hospitals have that, especially in the context of both Nottingham, the Valdo Calacane case, and the Southport case of medical records being accessed wrongly? Lots to discuss. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number, which is 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, thank you to everybody who's been in touch about the Queen and Andrew. We will return to that story. Charlie Ray, who's the former royal editor of The Sun, will join us in a few minutes' time. But I just want to read out a couple of messages just as we get the information coming through on Angela Rayner. We'll get all the details and bring them to you in a second. Penny says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Penny. The late Queen was an amazing monarch, but she helped to make Andrew the person he is, which is the very epitome of privilege and entitlement. Amanda says, I wonder if release of the Andrew files was a convenient way to delay the Mandelson files. Well, we know they're coming through in a few days' time. Simon Wanstead says, I cannot have our beautiful Queen, may she rest in peace, embroiled in any way with Randy Andy and his wrongness. She was his mother. I know you're not supposed to have favourites with your children, but he was hers and I was my mum's. Seriously, he stands on his own with this one. Great show, says Sim in Wanstead. Thank you for that. Yes, we have the information now about Rayner embroiled in election fraud row. This is the former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. She is a potential contender for the Labour leadership. We know that Andy Burnham, who's standing in Makerfield in the by-election, which will be on the 18th of June, is the Labour candidate. She is supporting him, but if he doesn't make it, she may well be one of the people, and there will be others, probably including Wes Streeting, who will challenge the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. We'll see what happens in Makerfield, but this is the Telegraph now reporting, and it's just been handed to me, and we're going to speak to former Labour Minister Bill Rammell in just a second, but I'll read you what I have in front of me. This is the Telegraph reporting that the former Deputy Prime Minister has denied involvement after the police have arrested 5 people over claims that fake independent candidates were entered in the poll. This is 4 men and a woman, all aged between 23 and 47, arrested on Thursday morning on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. That is Greater Manchester Police saying that. It comes amid claims that fake independent candidates were entered on the ballot for Thameside Borough Council in the heart of Ms Rayner's constituency of Ashton-under-Lyme to split votes for opposition parties. The alleged plot was reportedly carried out by people associated with Thameside Labour Group. One discussion is said to have taken place in Angela Rayner's kitchen. Labour candidate Atud Ul Rasul, the former vice chairman of the Ashton-under-Lyme Labour branch, was elected after beating the second place candidate Ahmed Mahmoud, an independent, by 177 votes. The 2 alleged fake candidates received 291 votes between them, and the alleged plot took place at the heart of Ms Rayner's constituency of Ashton-under-Lyme. The Telegraph is reporting it understands the former Deputy Prime Minister says the developments have nothing to do with her, and any suggestion she has been involved in or aware of any alleged wrongdoing is baseless. But this is certainly something which has caused an awful lot of consternation. Fake candidates allegedly discussed on WhatsApp groups that the police are now looking for. spokesman for Greater Manchester Police, saying this morning officers in Thameside arrested 5 people on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud as part of an investigation into alleged offences committed leading up to the local elections. In the days leading up to and following the election on the 7th of May, we received reports surrounding concerns about candidates within the St Peter's ward. Following initial inquiries last week, we've launched a full investigation into the allegations. The Telegraph understands that Labour is not aware that any of the individuals arrested are actually party figures, and the Labour Party themselves say no evidence has been presented of any Labour Party involvement in these allegations. We categorically reject any suggestion that the party was involved. The local Labour team is focused on what really matters, delivering for residents and protecting services, not playing political games. We aren't able to provide any further comment while police inquiries are underway. Bill Rammell is with me now, the former Labour Minister. Bill, I'm sure you do not want to, and nor do I, want to prejudice an active police investigation. Angela Rayner says that she has nothing to do with this, but certainly there are allegations that she has something to do with this. So what is your reaction to it?
Well, I've just heard about this, so I can't comment in detail. What I would say is that, pretending to be an independent candidate in order to split the opposition vote is a very, very serious offence. It's not unprecedented in British politics. I remember in the 1990s where someone in the southwest stood as a, quote, literal Democrat and took about 5,000 votes in order to stop the Liberal Democrats being elected. But nevertheless, it is very, very serious. That there is no evidence that the Labour Party is involved in this or Angela Rayner is involved in it, but the police need to investigate it to get to the bottom of it and throw the kitchen sink at whoever has done this, because it's a corruption of electoral politics.
Speaking of those previous times that you're aware of, and that's really interesting to get the context of that, literal Democrats rather than the Liberal Democrats. Are there other incidences you've heard of where people have, maybe a similar name or as in their first or second name is a similar name, or in terms of the order of candidates? I mean, how does this kind of work when it is done previous? Not talking about the specific case, but perhaps you have more detail or more experience of knowing about when this has happened previously. It's a very interesting thing that I think a lot of people, our viewers and listeners, may not know about. So any more information or experience you have, I'd be really interested to hear it.
Well, I've not got a great deal of detail, but when this story was put to me literally 2 or 3 minutes ago, that story in the southwest, and it was electoral fraud, came to mind, and it was someone who wanted to stop the Lib Dems from winning and stood as a literal Democrat. And under electoral law, you're entitled to do that.
But we can see what they're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it siphoned off about 3,000 votes, and that stopped. And when you looked at the figures, that stopped the Lib Dems from winning. So I'm not exonerating this any way, shape, or form.
Of course,
I think it's repugnant. It's an attempt to corrupt politics, and I welcome the fact that the police have arrested people and are investigating.
Really useful context there, Bill. I really appreciate that, and I know you're just reacting to this as it's almost literally been put into my hand, so I really appreciate that. In Makerfield, we know that nominations close on Tuesday. The Green candidate didn't even last a day, withdrew. We know there's a Restore Britain candidate called Rebecca Shepherd. We know that the Labour candidate is, of course, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. We know that Robert Kenyon is controversial to some degree as the Reform UK candidate. This is just an ongoing by-election. Can you see Keir Starmer campaigning in that constituency?
Well, Keir has said that, Keir has said that he's going to support the Labour candidate, and that's now Andy Burnham, and Keir has said that he's going to go to the constituency. Look, I remember talking to you over a week ago and saying that, I regret the fact that where we are, but I think Keir's position is untenable. His writ doesn't run throughout the government, and I think there does need to be a leadership contest. Now, my personal preference would be wedge streeting, but Andy is a very credible contender, but he's got a big challenge to win this by-election. Now, I think there are strong indicators, if you believe the bookmakers, and they're often the most accurate predictors of what will happen in elections. Andy Burnham is 2-1 on, Reform are 2-1 against. The Greens are in disarray. Caroline Lucas has urged people effectively to vote for Andy Burnham. It's going to be a big challenge, but I think given Andy's track record in the local area where he's got strong links, I think there's a very strong chance that he can win. And if he does, I was looking at a poll yesterday from More in Common, reputable pollster, that said if Andy Burnham was Prime Minister, which way would you vote at the general election? And for the first time in 18 months, Labour was ahead and clearly ahead of Reform.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I take nothing away from that, but there are obviously a heck of a lot of what-ifs until we get to that situation. It's interesting you mentioned Caroline Lucas there, the former leader of the Green Party, a vastly changed party, of course, in recent years. She is saying that, as you correctly said there, that the Greens should withdraw. Interestingly, Jacob Rees-Mogg advocated that the Conservatives withdraw as well to give Reform UK a clear run. The Conservatives, it would be a massive, I mean, you're climbing Everest to win that constituency. It's highly unlikely they would, but the former Mayor of Wigan, Michael Winstanley, is their candidate, and Kemi Badenoch says he would make an excellent champion of the area, having lived and worked and represented the local area for years. We know that Alan Lord Hope, the Monster Raving Looney Party candidate, is running as well, which is somewhat inevitable. I got an email earlier tonight, I can't remember quite the details, but I know there's someone who's going to be dressed as a fox who is standing as well because of animal rights, and that is, often by-elections get all sorts of people standing in them. I just want to talk a little bit about Rachel Reeves and what she has said in regard to people, families going on holidays in the summer, attractions around the UK. She's fired 300 million quid at making people's, reducing VAT from 20% to 5% on a lot of different attractions. This is what she told the House of Commons today.
I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well. These changes will apply across the UK from the start of the Scottish school holidays on the 25th of June and run until the end of school holidays in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on the 1st of September.
What do you make of this policy? It will make some difference, a positive difference, I think, Bill, but maybe not as big a difference as people need. What do you think?
Well, look, you know, we're in a very, very difficult position, bluntly, because of Donald Trump's war in Iran. You know, before this, the first 3 months of this year, the UK had the fastest growing economy in the G7. But because of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, there's a very strong headwind coming towards us, and the government is trying to mitigate that. Now, you know, you can't absolve people from the economic reality of what's happening in the global economy. But this is an attempt. And, you know, there's a range of measures. You know, bluntly, I welcome the fact that it's not reckless. You know, go back to the Ukraine war, Liz Trump, she spent 40 billion
Liz Truss.
Sorry. What did I say?
You said Liz Trump. That was a Freudian slip if ever there was one, Bill.
It really was, wasn't it? No, Liz Truss, she spent £40 billion, which is a colossal sum of money, unfunded, subsidising people's energy bills, and that sent the economy into a nosedive.
It wasn't the only thing that did, but it was certainly one of the cocktail of ridiculousness that Liz Truss presided over when she crashed the economy. I know there are going to be loads of people sitting at home saying, Peter, you're talking nonsense. That is a fact. That happened. Bill, please continue.
It did, absolutely. And I think it's right that we don't mirror that. But this is a proportionate set of measures to try and help people in the circumstances. So, for example, you know, it's the first time in 15 years that the tax-free mileage allowance for people who work for themselves has been increased by 10 pence. We saw the continued freeze in fuel duty. There's, you know, the support for young people. There's a reduction in VAT in summer visits. All of it is welcome. But you know, the thing that's really needed is an end to the conflict in Iran, get the oil flowing through the Straits of Hormuz to head off these economic headwinds.
Bill, thank you. Really interesting to talk to you as always. Bill Rammell there, former government minister there. Let's speak to Matt in Cheshire, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Matt, I'll keep you on the right side of the law when it comes to these arrests and what are happening. So just be a little bit patient with me if we need to, because there have been some arrests earlier. But I know this Rayner story is something you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'll premise everything with the word allegedly.
Good idea.
A friend of mine was one of the people that reported these incidents to the police.
Okay.
And apparently Labour were putting out independent candidates who were people that had been affiliated with them in the past.
Interesting. Okay.
Because their name
I should say that Labour deny that, but do continue, Matt.
Yeah. Obviously, they were people that were affiliated with them previously, knowing their name was Mud.
Right.
They attempted to put people out under the sort of premise that they were sort of stealth independents, if you like.
Okay.
I was told about this weeks ago.
Yeah. Do you know what, Matt? I'm just a wee bit nervous about the fact there is a police investigation ongoing about this, and I'm just going to stop the call now. Not just because you're a brilliant contributor. I always like to hear from you, but I just want to be really careful. I don't want to get you or me or the station in trouble here. But can I ask you just more broadly, maybe, Matt, about? I mean, Angela Rayner obviously denies she has any involvement in this, but you have great views and really thoughtful views on the Labour Party. I mean, do you think that this Makerfield by-election is going to be won by Andy Burnham? What do you think?
I got the Denton and Gorton by-election wrong, but I didn't know the demographics of the area, you see.
Sure.
I thought Reform would win that. Judging off what people of Wigan have been through, probably similar to my area. It's probably a similar sort of makeup as my area.
Okay.
I would think that Labour could put anybody in that seat, and I think that they've just had enough. And I don't really think,
Burnham is popular though, Matt.
Yeah, but remember, he's been the mayor of Greater Manchester while all this decline and decay has been happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
So he basically is a scalp to be taken, and we can all move on from this into a brighter, better future and leave them all in the past.
We'll see what happens, Matt. Listen, thank you. Thanks for your understanding as well. I just want to keep us all absolutely on the right side of the law here. And it is a live show, and we need to be careful about all that. Matt's a great caller. He always has common sense, and I'm always happy to take him on the air. But I just want to be really careful about all of that, because I don't want to prejudice any action that may or may not happen. Thank you to lots of people who've been involved in touch, actually. John and Hinckley, a bit of a long message, but a good one, where he says, great show as ever, thank you. I'm very concerned about the incident in Golders Green that you mentioned earlier on in your programme. Your source raised on the fact that the suspect who was arrested today was carrying only an air weapon, in inverted commas. As a member of a legitimate licensed amateur air weapons club back in my late teens, we were taught not only about the responsibility of possessing an air weapon, but their capability. Air weapon capability is measured in kinetic muzzle energy, and the standard is foot-pounds. And any air rifle that exceeds 12 foot-pounds is classified a firearm under the Firearms Act. Any air pistol exceeding 6 foot-pounds is also considered a prohibited weapon. Thank you for this, John. I'm learning an awful lot. However, this is academic. Any air rifle or air pistol that is below the foot-pound limit can be harmful. Whilst air weapons normally use a lead convex flat head pellet, which can penetrate skin at a short to point-blank range, people can be blinded. There's also air weapon ammunition classes Sabot rounds after the French turn, and the technology is deployed in tank warfare armament, which are hardened rounds designed to penetrate skin and bone, normally for shooting game or vermin, and can also kill a human at a range where penetration can reach the heart or brain. Air weapons are not just air weapons. John, fascinating, and thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Sean in Cardiff says the ticket saving scheme from Rachel in accounts is laughable. Haven't MPs been getting free theatre and football tickets for the last number of years? Yes, they certainly have. Thank you to Keith in Nottingham, who says, with tax in the UK so high, the wealth creators are taking their money with them, and as figures show, young people are following them to take up careers abroad. Martin Allen in New York-on-Trent says, evening Peter, Israel and the treatment of prisoners. Please remember when some of these people sat on buses and other vehicles and places and blew innocent people up, and this has happened not just in Israel but in the rest of the world, including the UK. Martin, I know exactly what you mean, and I just don't want any prisoner anywhere to be treated badly. And Daniel in Israel has been in touch as well. He says, I'm a British-born Israeli living in Israel for 44 years, and I just want to make clear that Itamar Ben-Gvir does not represent the vast majority of Israelis. This is the Israeli government minister, part of the coalition that Benjamin Netanyahu had to put together to retain power. He is someone who has been laughing at, taunting at, and putting out videos of people on this flotilla, this Gaza flotilla. I don't support the flotilla. I think it's a really stupid idea. But at the same time, if people are bound and being prisoners, you shouldn't be taunting them or being horrible to them. You should be treating them with respect. Daniel continues, he is an extreme far-right fascist, Ben-Gvir, who only serves as a minister so that Benjamin Netanyahu can stay in power and do everything he can to avoid going to jail. 90% of Israelis are disgusted with his behaviour, and you will see this all for yourselves in a few months when we kick these people out of government on election day. We fully back our government in its war against the Islamic terrorists that want all of us dead. But we do not want people like Ben-Gvir as part of that government, says Daniel in Israel. Daniel has a great message, and thank you for it, and I really appreciate that. And doesn't it just show, yet again, that you can disagree with your government, you can disagree with what people in your government do, and it's fine, because Israel is a democracy. Hamas doesn't allow people to do that. It kills them when they disagree with Hamas, and that is what they do to their own people. The Palestinian people. I want to free Palestine from Hamas. I'm not sure lots of other pro-Palestinians do, to be brutally honest. Ben-Gvir, horrible man, despicable behaviour. I think we can totally condemn it, as does Daniel, and no qualification on that whatsoever. We're going to talk about this later in the programme as well. What is Labour's obsession with theme parks, says this person. They talk about them in a weird tone. Reeve sounds as if she's read a pre-written load of noise she doesn't actually understand. Really weird. Sharon says, I love your show, but your jokes are rubbish. She didn't get the egg joke. Well, maybe if you got the joke, you'd realise the jokes are brilliant. Penny says, I love the egg joke. Great programme, the best on talk. I think I'll go with Penny, Sharon, even though I very much appreciate your message, and I did explain the joke earlier, and I probably won't do so again, otherwise I'll probably just be taken off the air. Right, we're going to talk about the Prince Andrew files in a second with Charlie Ray, the former royal editor at The Sun, and we will also take your calls, texts, tweets and messages, so do get in touch. 0344 499 1000.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kieran has been in touch. He says an arrest alone doesn't prohibit you from talking about it. Well, that's partially true. He also says, please stop being so cautious. You can discuss all around the subject till your heart's content. It's only when there's a charge you must not discuss any further. You sound like a BBC person. Stop being afraid to discuss it. Kieran, that's not quite the case. Proceedings are active from the moment of arrest. So you do need to be cautious about this. I had a long discussion with our lawyer behind the scenes, very, very good lawyer called Lucy, about all of this, because there is a tendency, and you're far less likely to prejudice a legal process before charge is brought and before someone is charged. So I totally get where you're coming from, Kieran, but if I have a caller who's introducing new speculation and evidence potentially about this, I need to safeguard him, I need to safeguard me, I need to safeguard the channel. So I'm going to make no apology for doing that. I do totally understand that the likelihood of prejudicing a case is far less likely before charges are brought, but you can't just say anything you want about it. That is a popular misconception. Legal lecture over, Kieran, but listen, thank you for your message. I do appreciate it. Lots to discuss in all of this, and we're going to talk now actually about the Prince Andrew files. Charlie Ray is with us, the former royal editor at The Sun. Charlie, great to have you on the programme. What did we actually learn today? And I wonder a little bit about whether we're actually slightly re-evaluating the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, who so many people see as a pretty sainted figure.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. And the papers that have been released today, the tranche of papers that have been released today by the government, slightly tarnish that reputation of the Queen. And what the situation is that the Duke of Kent was the trade envoy, and he was due to leave, and Andrew was put forward by the Queen, and she made it clear to government officials that she wished for Andrew to take over the role. And it would come about at the time when Andrew was about to leave the Royal Navy, so he would have a job to go to. And there's no doubt about it that she pushed for Andrew to become that job, and he was then described as a natural fit for the job. Now, but the point is that no one in government thought it good enough or fit enough to have a vetting procedure for Andrew, because it's another member of the royal family. Well, we'll give him the job and that'll be fine. But the officials did actually say that Andrew shouldn't be offered trips on taxpayers' money, which involved golfing trips. So that they were quite keen on him not just using it as a giant playing golf around the world. But no one else but Andrew was considered for the job. So I suspect we're going to get the usual suspects who criticise the monarchy will be jumping up and down again, criticising the monarchy. But this all happened a long time ago. I'm not suggesting that the Queen was correct in doing it. It's not going to look good for the royal family.
I wonder about the Queen in later life as well. She was clearly very mentally sharp, basically until the end. Well, essentially until the end. I mean, she met and kissed hands with Liz Truss just a couple of days before she died. She must have feared what may come out after her death in regard to Andrew. She must have known files like this would have been released in the fullness of time after her death.
Well, it's hard to say whether she would actually know that these particular files.
Well, sure.
Would actually come out. But clearly, by the time that she was on the way out, that we'd had the Epstein scandal, that it was already brewing. So she was quite well aware of what was going on and the involvement, if any, even though he denies all the allegations that have been made against him, of the involvement of her own son with Epstein, a convicted paedophile. So I suspect that at the last few days of her life, she may have thought that I'm better off out of it now. I don't know what's going to happen, because everything else that came out after her death.
I wonder if the Queen, I want to be really respectful to Queen Elizabeth II, who I want to be absolutely clear I thought was a brilliant monarch in many, many ways. She was a kind of mother of the nation, grandmother of the nation, and held us all together. And it's actually, let me phrase the question correctly here, Charlie. I wonder if she was the kind of firebreak. I wonder if she was a little bit... There was a lot of this criticism of Andrew, obviously, and the Newsnight interview and all the rest of it happened before she died. But since she has died, that has just gone up to a much greater level. We know the Epstein files are out. We know Ghislaine Maxwell's been convicted and all the rest of it. But I wonder, in terms of criticism of the royal family, and particularly criticism of Andrew, whether the Queen was a sort of firebreak. We didn't want to go as far as some people had gone because we didn't want to disrespect or annoy this person who'd given so much to our nation. And now it's Charles and Camilla, who I think are great people too. I think they've given a lot to this nation as well. But it's not quite the same, is it?
No, it's not. And I agree with everything you've just said. But as I say, you know, this is a woman who is a remarkable diplomat, who is a remarkable mother of the nation, and we've now got, for the very first time, something that has tainted that reputation. I don't think it's going to cause her reputation to be tarnished greatly, but it's not going to look good for the next few days with these documents that have come out.
She was very, very good at protecting the firm, wasn't she? But did she have a blind spot when it came to Andrew? And why do you think that was?
Well, everybody keeps on saying, although I've never been able to establish whether this was actually a fact, that Andrew was her favourite son.
We've heard that a lot, haven't we? Yeah.
We've heard that a lot. And you've got to remember that, in effect, there were two families. There were Charles and Anne born, first of all, prior to her becoming Queen. Then Andrew and Edward were then born. So you've got these two different sets coming up. And I suspect as well that she spent a little bit more time with the younger Andrew and Edward than she did with the younger Charles and Anne.
Well, she missed Charles's first 3 Christmases, didn't she?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All this is quite well documented.
Yeah.
So there was, I suspect, a little bit of favoritism, particularly with Andrew and Edward, but Andrew in particular. And I think she wanted to make sure that he was the spare at one time for a long time. And so she wanted to make sure that he had some sort of role in life. And this trade envoy suited him. And that's why she pushed for it. We also have to remember, yes, she was the monarch. She was the mother of the nation. But she was also the mother of a family. And you know what mothers are like. They tend to protect their children.
Certainly, but we don't have the same kind of entitlement from Charles, for example, or Edward, actually. I mean, Edward and Sophie are fantastic. They're great people. They do. I love Sophie Wessex, or the Duchess of Edinburgh, she now is. She does loads of really, really good work. She does loads. She has lots of very kind of forgotten causes that she talks about and that she does charity work for. The character, it seems to me anyway, and we don't really know these people. You know them far better than I do, Charlie. But the character of Edward and Charles is very different from the pompous entitlement of Andrew.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and no one can explain why Andrew turned out the way he is. He's a very arrogant man, unlike his siblings, and it's hard to explain how he fits in or how he fitted in to all this.
Yeah. Charlie, fascinating to talk to you, and thank you for joining us. Sorry, you had something else to say there, Charlie? Or?
No, I'm just saying thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, well, lovely to talk to you. No doubt we'll talk again soon. Charlie Ray there, the former royal editor of The Sun on the Prince Andrew files. What do you make of this? 0344 499 1000. Text here, and remember, with text is 87222 with the word talk in your text. Someone says, why was Andrew the Queen's favourite when he was such a delinquent? Dan in Kent, talking about Israel, says, Daniel from Israel is the reality of the Middle East. It's a democracy in a barbaric world. It's Bruno versus Tyson in a modern world. Thank you for that, Dan. Appreciate that. And Steve has been in touch on a much lighter note, saying anyone who doesn't get Peter's jokes are missing the point. His humour is self-deprecating, and I'm sure he'll agree that there are people much better at it than him. Very good, Steve. Very clever. Thank you for that. We'll take some of your calls, text, tweets and voice notes next here on Talk, and we'll also be talking in just a few minutes' time about another very important matter. This is to do with hospital records, and we're being told, oh, digital ID is fine and there's no issue and everything's all right, medical information can all be in one place. Well, both the Nottingham victims of Valdo Calacane, that absolute scumbag who killed 3 people, murdered 3 people, had those 3 people's medical records were accessed by staff who've now been sacked correctly, and the victims of Southport as well had their medical records accessed, and nobody lost their job over that. Outrageous that that happened. So in a world where we're being told, in a country, we're being told, well, you don't need to worry about your medical records, you don't need to worry about digital ID, all's fine. Who actually has access to that, and should we worry about that? And give me a ring about that. We're going to talk about it in a second with the founder of Freedom Watch, GB, and we'll take your calls, text, tweets and voice notes on anything you want to talk about as well, right throughout the programme and in just a few minutes' time. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Amelia in Birmingham. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Amelia, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say? I think Rachel Reeves is on your mind, and I understand you're the first-time caller, so you're especially welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted... Sorry, what was your name?
Peter.
Hey, Peter, yeah. About this whole Rachel Reeves thing, she was right to get heckled because Labour are ruining this country and they're not very patriotic. They're just betraying, like, what they were voted in for. Do you not agree?
Do you think it's okay for someone to shout obscenities and to verbally attack anyway, the Chancellor of the Exchequer? Could they not make their point in a more polite way?
Well, that's the thing. I understand why he said what he said, and I agree it wasn't in the most professional way. But I understand his anger because
I totally understand his anger too. There's a lot of anger towards this government. Do you feel angry towards this government, Amelia?
Yeah, I do.
And why is that?
Because they just keep betraying us. They keep putting other people first when they should be putting British people first. They're just like putting us to the back of the queue and letting in undocumented men.
Although we know today the level of migration has gone down to 171,000, and that's a lot lower than it has been in recent years.
No, but the lie.
Well, those are the official figures.
The lie, they twist the figures to like make them seem like they're doing a good job when really they're not, and then this is why this country feels very unsafe at the minute because the government, they do not care. But why that guy said what he said what a lot of us were thinking, but that's the only way like you can get these people to listen. There's no like going online because then they don't care, they don't listen, they don't actually talk to the public. They just think all is well and good, but they're not. They're just betraying us every day. These people are in government.
Okay, Amelia, thanks for your call. Do give me another ring on another occasion. Andy's been in touch on Twitter and says, Rachel out of touch? Yes, perhaps when she berated White Van Man. She should have remembered that British manners are somewhat lacking in the House of Commons on Wednesday at Prime Minister's questions. Lenny says, I believe Burnham is an easy target, so it can be a liability. Again, we are a desperate country because of disastrous policies by Labour. Laura Jane is in Hampshire who wants to talk about Rachel Reeves on the policy that she's announced today, reducing the level of VAT on those holiday attractions. Do you think this is a good thing, Laura Jane?
Well, obviously it's a nice thing, but to me, it seems like one big bribery. Be nice to everyone over the summer and they'll feel good about us. I really feel it's almost an embarrassing bribe. And I feel sorry for the children who are free on the buses anyway. I feel sorry for the 16-year-olds because during the holidays, they'll still have to pay. In certain cities, over 15s do have to pay. And I think they have enough trouble in the holidays finding things to do. But I actually think it's one big bribery, Peter. I really do.
I mean, Jeff has been in touch on Twitter and says, what's to stop the cinemas, museums, etc., simply keeping prices to the families the same and keeping the VAT dividend to help pay the national insurance increases? I mean, in theory, there's nothing to stop them doing that, actually.
I agree. On paper, it looks like. Sorry, that's rather an old-fashioned expression. On paper, it feels like one big bribe, though. And a lot, there are some museums which are free anyway. So, the whole thing's just word salad. It really is, and it just makes me cross because some people will fall for it and think, wow, this looks amazing, but it's just not the case. It really isn't.
It's not a negative thing, though, Laura Jane, is it? That people will pay less for these attractions thanks to the government.
Not a negative thing, absolutely, and people deserve to be cheered up, and it's pretty difficult for everyone. But I still think that the sort of feeling behind it is a bit of bribery, and I don't like that. I really don't like that.
Laura Jane, listen, thanks for that really excellent point, and thank you very much indeed. I suppose the question as well is, do we need to go to theme parks and cinemas to entertain our kids? What happened to, I don't know, played with boxes as kids. I went out. I suppose a lot of parents don't let their kids out these days. I went over fields and did all sorts of, climbed trees and did all sorts of things that just don't seem to be part of a British child's childhood these days. We're going to talk in just a second, and Nick Flatt has been in touch on Twitter as well. He says, I'm a retired consultant, so I'm aware of the NHS IT restrictions and indeed flaws. Strictly speaking, you're not allowed to access your own medical records, but I frequently did. For example, measuring my own COVID antibody levels. So listen, thanks for that. It's very interesting, of course, that this has come up because we're in an interesting period where 11 NHS staff have been sacked for accessing medical records of the Nottingham attack victims. These are the victims of Valdo Calacane. And in just a second, we're going to speak to the founder of Freedom Watch GB about this. So stay with us here on Talk.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
you're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Really interesting message from Elisa in Chelmsford, who is someone who contributes to the show pretty often as a regular texter, and she sent me this message. Morning, Peter. I went to a new NHS dentist this morning. As I sat there, I saw everyone looking at their phones, and I bravely said, I'm just looking at us all, staring at our phones, and I remember the days when we would strike up a conversation. Would anyone like to have a conversation with me? Said Elisa. All bar one reacted with a smile. One lady said, what would you like to talk about? In true British tradition, I spoke about the weather and the heat coming our way this weekend, and that was it. Suddenly, all bar one put their phones away, and we conversed together. I just thought you'd appreciate me sharing this with you. Could it be a topic for discussion on your programme? I mean, it's part of the reason for decline in standards these days. Talking to one another. Crazy. Someone should set up some sort of TV or radio station so people can do that with one another and we can keep our community going. David in the Cotswolds says, evening Peter, when Rayner started her torrent of scum abuse, Starmer called everyone far-right nationalists. What did Reeves expect a working man to do when he saw her trying to make a photo op, says David in the Cotswolds. Very interesting message there, David, thank you. Ernie says, I think Laura Jane is right. Do you think Rachel would have cut the VAT if there wasn't an upcoming by-election? No chance, says Ernie. Tim in Bedford says, it's the English leaving that make the immigration figures look better, says Tim. And John in Lincolnshire says, all this hoo-ha about who the next Prime Minister is, and yet we don't know the most important thing about the candidates. Are they a cat person, and how will they get on with Larry? Well, if Larry was 19, the cat at Downing Street, very recently, I think someone should write a book about him. Maybe they could call it Political Animals. Right then, let's talk about this really worrying development. This is just on and on it goes. We remember a few months ago the Afghanistan people who helped us there, their details were put in the public domain. There's a massive data breach there. Now we had the, yesterday we had the information about those 3 little girls and other victims of the horrendous Southport attack by that scumbag Axel Redekubana, the murderer. They were in hospital, of course. There were many people who were being treated in hospital, and there were medical records that were accessed by medical, quote-unquote, professionals who shouldn't have done that. No one in that case lost their job. Now today, Nottingham, victims of Valdo Calacane, who murdered 3 people, their medical records were accessed and 11 people were sacked because of that. So when we're in a country where it says, where the government is saying, well, trust us with your information, the NHS says, trust us with your information, should we actually? Montgomery Toms is with me now, who is the founder of Freedom Watch GB. Montgomery, thank you for joining me this evening. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, well, it's everything that I myself and many other people have been talking about. When you centralize information, it automatically becomes vulnerable. Digital ID, just to, just get straight into it, is a massive threat to the British public. And it's not just medical records. It's where you go, what you do. The risk is pretty endless, actually, when it comes to your information being centralized. You already mentioned the Afghan data leak there. I mean, that's a massive cause for concern. And obviously, the story that we're talking about now is a massive cause for concern. We've got the gov.uk wallet essentially using our veterans as guinea pigs to bring forward digital veteran cards, which is going to have all sorts of personal information on it, such as where they serve, etc. So we don't need a digital ID. Obviously, they U-turned on it, as they said, which they didn't. They're bringing out digital ID regardless, and whether there's a mandated aspect or not is kind of irrelevant. In the same way, if I go to Oxford Street these days in the West End, most shops don't accept cash, meaning private venues are excluding people and saying that they have to have an online card rather than an offline alternative. And my position is really clear. We need to have the right to live offline. And even if we have the right to live offline, we need to be able to do it in a very convenient way.
How realistic is that, though? How realistic is it that, I mean, there are some people who use cash a lot. There aren't many people who aren't online. There are about 3 million people in this country who don't have access to the internet at home, but everybody does in libraries, for example, for free or a very low cost, for example. I mean, the world is moving online, and many people completely straightforwardly and with their knowledge surrender their privacy to a lot of different companies. Isn't that just the price we pay for the convenience of online?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we live in a digital age, right? And that's something that we should opt to go into. We should have the choice. In Britain, we don't believe in a papers, please society, and we believe in this thing called liberty and freedom. Now, with, you know, Starmer, the Labour government, and even the Tories, that seems to be a bit pie in the sky these days. But I fundamentally believe in the right to live offline, and it's not pie in the sky. I use cash, but if I want to use a card, I should have the choice to do that. And I don't see why it's so complicated. I ask the question, what's the motivation to centralise our information? Why is the government so obsessed with a digital ID? Why is Tony Blair in the ear of the Labour government to this day? Winston Churchill abolished ID cards after the war. Tony Blair attempted to bring them back in the noughties. We then said no, and it's time for that hat trick. It's time to say, no, we don't want our information centralised. We're seeing too much evidence of hacks, of data breaches, or just people snooping. So we want the right to live offline. It should be it should just be basic. And
I totally get where you're coming from, and I have a lot of sympathy with your argument. Yeah. But you can't go back, can you? You can't say that actually we're going to live. I mean, how many people actually live offline? How many people don't have their information somewhere stored by a company? I mean, we're talking about governments, and that's a big issue, and metadata, putting the data together. I don't want my GP knowing what my purchases are in my local supermarket, who'll then tell me you eat too much chocolate or you drink too much Diet Coke or whatever. Both of those things are true, by the way. But nonetheless, the point is that the kind of offline life, the kind of almost off-grid life that you're perhaps pointing towards, it's unrealistic for most people, is it not?
Well, I sort of beg to differ, and obviously I'm about to talk about a minority here, but you've got elderly people. If you even mention the notion of a digital ID to my nan, she'll just look at me utterly bemused. My nan used cash for everything. You're excluding elderly people there. There's homeless people on the streets that rely on a physical currency and rely on...
And all of that's absolutely true, and I have members of my family who would be in much the same position as your nan, who can just about use a smartphone. But the point is that is something that, I mean, the march of technology is meaning that people are voluntarily surrendering their privacy in lots of different ways. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing. I'm just saying it's happening, and the government is saying, well, lots of people have done this. It's not a big issue for most of them. We're going to put this data together and have a digital ID.
Yeah, well, it's a case of principle, right? This is why I believe in having a digital bill of rights, which ring fences our fundamental freedoms. As I say, I'm saying that if you want to, go ahead and live online, you're well within your right to that. I do. Look, I'm on social media. I have a bank account. That's fine.
You're using Zoom right now?
Using Zoom right now. That's very true. Where I really fundamentally draw a line is the case of principle around a digital ID, and I'll just quickly just build on the motivations here, because let's be real, I don't think anyone really trusts the government. I mean, yeah, I couldn't even imagine the stat on that, but I read there's a sort of 95% lack of trust in this country. So would you trust the government with your data? The answer is most likely no. But then if we expand on that, let's look at a broader picture here, which is things like facial recognition being rolled out up and down Great Britain. You've got one login, which is forcing company directors to basically lose your company unless you sign up to the first form of digital ID, which is one login. You've got some kind of a structure and form of a social credit system kind of on the horizon, much like they have in China, where you're sort of policed based on your behaviour. So
we're not moving to social credit, are we? I mean, that's tinfoil hat stuff.
I don't think it is tinfoil hat stuff. I mean, you've already got carbon credits being tracked kind of pretty much on most devices. You go and buy a sandwich from M&S these days, and they're telling you how much carbon you use.
But I mean, they may well be doing that, but that's on M&S. That's not on me saying, right, if I buy a ham sandwich that is produced in the UK, that is better than, I don't know, a sandwich that was imported from New Zealand because there is New Zealand lamb in it, and you're a better or worse person and you're entitled to more or fewer things. I mean, that slippery slope argument just isn't true, is it?
Well, I disagree. I beg to differ. I think it is very much true.
But where's your evidence?
What's my evidence? Well, the facts that we're okay. So if we have a look at the Chinese model, we'll go for a really basic example. Is you jaywalk in China. Obviously, I know we don't have jaywalking laws in England, but I'm just using it as an example, right? You jaywalk in China, your face gets displayed, your social credit score goes down, and maybe you can't access something from a vending machine. Well, look, we've got this so-called climate crisis, which I don't buy into the man-made climate change narrative at all, where they're turning around and saying, you know, we've got to essentially lower our personal carbon footprints. Do you really think it's pie in the sky for our authoritarian government not to turn around to and say, to meet net zero targets, you're only allowed to have one flight per year?
That is not going to happen. You have no evidence to suggest that's going to happen. You're saying you're saying you don't want it to happen, and I get that. I don't want it to happen either, but there's no evidence that it will happen.
Okay, so let's take your premise to say there's zero evidence, right? And would you not feel that it's worth ring fencing that so it doesn't happen, and to at least get the security from our very authoritarian, anti-free speech, anti-freedom, anti-liberty government? They don't basically turn around and say, do you know what? We're going to protect your right to live offline. We're not interested in surveilling you. We don't need to roll out facial recognition and treat you like walking barcodes and criminals all the time. We're just going to let you be an individual, let you be free, and make sure that the relationship between the state and the individual behaves as one of simply, you're an individual, and we respect your right to privacy. And I think that's as far as it goes.
We're just coming up to the news, so I just have one more question.
Please, yeah.
I mean, facial recognition solves crime, does it not? That is something that a lot of very good crime commentators in this programme, including Mike Neville, who is not someone who, I don't know if you know Mike, but he's not someone who, you know, wants to crack down on people's liberties. He says it solves crime. What is your concern about it?
What crime? So my concern is, and I'll give you a personal example. I appreciate you've got not much time, so I'll be as quick as I can.
Go for it.
But there was a period in 2025 where I was counter-demonstrating a Pride demo in London, where I was wearing a placard that stated that trans equals mental illness. That was a statement I made. I know it's a different conversation, but that was my right to free speech. I was arrested, I was detained, and then I was banned from the city of Westminster. Now, if I was to enter Westminster, I would have been arrested again. One of the most fundamental ways they can catch you doing that is with facial recognition. So I ask you, more rhetorically, because I say we're running out of time, define what a crime is. And these days, obviously, non-crime hate incidents have sort of gone away, but we had that for a good amount of time. We've got Public Order Act as well. So I ask you the question, what crimes are they policing? And I'm very concerned about how this
that in itself, that's a whole other argument, which I'm very happy to discuss at some point in the future. Really interesting to talk to you, Montgomery Toms there, who has just joined us there from Freedom Watch GB. What do you think of what he said there? I challenged him a bit, but I agree with him on a lot of stuff. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Plenty of time for calls in the last hour here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 9 o'clock. Thank you for your company on the Evening Exchange. Loads to talk about, including some breaking news from the Telegraph newspaper. Labour is preparing a £1 billion stealth tax on family holidays. What about the one they give with one hand, they take away with the other? They've just given us 300 million quid for slightly cheaper attractions, taking the VAT off those attractions. And now HMRC officials drawing up plans to impose VAT of 20% on top of the fees that airports charge airlines to use their runways and terminals. Guess who that's going to be passed on to? You. We'll hear more about that from David Maddox, who is the political editor of The Independent, in just a second. I'll give you the story that's just been handed to me. It is a nice time to do a programme for lots of reasons, but of course we get breaking news right throughout the evening. Lots of people getting in touch about migration, about digital ID, about those VAT cuts as well, about hospital records and all the rest of it. Loads to discuss, so please do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss and a bit more time in the 9 o'clock hour to do so. So please do give me a shout on 0344 499 1000. Plenty to talk about on the Evening Exchange before 10 o'clock. Stay with us. Tony in Warrington's been in touch on the discussion I just had with Montgomery there. He says, what evidence does he need with digital ID and facial recognition? There's a threat that the government could take it further. I don't want that risk. You will only have evidence when they abuse their power, as they have done or tried to on many occasions over the past 2 years. Small state, keep out of our way. That's what Maggie said. I agree, says Tony in Warrington. Alison says, 10 years ago I spent a month in hospital, and approximately 6 months later I received a letter from the hospital. They said my medical records held on microfiche and many other patients were found in an alleyway 3 miles from the hospital or so. The person who found them took them to a local newspaper, so I have no trust that my information will be kept safe and private. David in Canterbury says, about digital ID, I keep getting phone calls from scammers who know one of my 2 phone numbers and my car registration. I want to know where they get this data, especially my car registration. David, I have a great thing on my phone. I've just got a new phone. It's an old iPhone because I never buy new ones for complex reasons, due to Martin Lewis telling me never to get new ones. But anyway, there's a thing on my phone which I've just discovered, which is fantastic, which if you don't know the person, if the person's number is not on your phone, it says this is Apple or whatever, can you tell us who you are? And then it comes up as a text message who the person is. So there's a Milwaukee number, I don't know anybody in Milwaukee, there's a Milwaukee number that rang me 7 times today. Every time the phone said, who is this person? Peter's not going to pick it up until you tell us who that is. And I then blocked the number because it was clearly just a scam. You can also involve yourself, and you can put your numbers on various websites, government websites, to well, interesting in the context of this conversation, but certainly you can put yourself on a register of people who shouldn't be contacted by sort of junk calls, essentially. I put I have 2 numbers, I put my numbers on those, and I put my family's numbers on them some time ago, and the calls did go down, not entirely, but went to a minimum. And I mean, if you Google this stuff, you will find it. So please do that. Interestingly, a big story today, of course, the government very happy. Rachel Reeves telling the Houses of Parliament about how it's all going to be wonderful this summer. Well, it might not be. I'm going to give you some information that the Telegraph is reporting in just a second. But first, let's have a look at the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, telling the House of Commons today how she's spending £300 million of taxpayers' money, our money, of course, giving people discounts to attractions and cheaper bus fares for children this summer. This is what the Chancellor said.
I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well. These changes will apply across the UK, from the start of the Scottish school holidays on the 25th of June and run until the end of school holidays in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on the 1st of September.
Well, that was Rachel Reeves there. Sorry, I was just finishing my cup of tea there. David Maddox is with us, and David, I wonder if you've seen this in the Telegraph. Lovely to see you this evening, by the way, but let me just read out a little bit of what the Telegraph is reporting about HMRC officials drawing up plans to impose VAT of 20% on top of fees airports charge airlines. This is Rachel Reeves giving with one hand and apparently taking away with another. This is 20% fees typically passed on to customers in full, meaning the move would heap more costs on holidaymakers and business. At Heathrow, the measures could add a fiver to the current standard charge of about £24 already. One airline industry insider said the Labour plan amounted to a stealth tax on families at a time when the cost of living crisis meant many people are already struggling to afford a holiday. Now, you know as well as I do, David, that the biggest single purchase that most families will have outside of their mortgage, if they happen to have a mortgage, will be their summer holiday. That just got more expensive.
It's almost as if she's preparing to kind of encourage us to all have staycations at a time when jet fuel's going to be at a premium because of the war in the Middle East. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of classic, yeah, as you say, give with one hand, take with the other. I mean, the give was pretty small fry today, unless you're somebody who claims tax back for driving, and there was a decent pay, a decent kind of tax allowance there, but the rest of it was, you know, summer holidays, small fry on tickets and buses.
It will make a difference, and some of our viewers and listeners are kind of welcoming him, but saying it's not enough. And here we are, just hours later, this new sum to be imposed on top of air passenger duty, which ranges from £15 to £106 for an overseas flight on an economy class ticket, depending on the distance flown. So, was today a missed opportunity for the Chancellor, do you think?
I think it was a huge missed opportunity, actually. I mean, she could have done some quite big things, but you know, you got to wonder if her kind of political and economic room is so limited now. This is a government on the point of kind of collapse or being replaced, and she's not going to survive as Chancellor once Keir Starmer's out the door. So, you know, and I don't think they've got much room for manoeuvre money-wise.
David, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, David. I just have to disagree with you. I don't think you've got the memo. Everything's marvellous and brilliant, and everything's wonderful. And Keir Starmer told ITV News today how these migration figures are all brilliant, and he is the best Prime Minister we've ever had in the history of Prime Minister. So I really think you need to get with the programme here, David. Let's see what the Prime Minister said to ITV News today about how everything is so wonderful in our country.
To see the migration figures this morning come down significantly, and that's obviously on the top of the news about waiting lists last week, where we had a record drop in waiting lists, and of course the news about growth, the money we've got in our economy, the fastest growing economy in the G7. So that's all really good news within about a week or so, and of course today we're announcing cost of living package for the summer for families. So I'm really proud that we're getting on and delivering. Thank you very much.
Is it all too little too late, do you think, Prime Minister?
This is really good delivery. This is really significant. So I'm very, very pleased. All of those figures are good news. Taken together, they're a very strong package.
It's all marvellous, isn't it, David?
It's all great, which is, you know, why they got such a drubbing in the local elections and why Labour MPs can't wait for Andy Burnham to arrive. Although I did notice he also said he was going to campaign in Makerfield, which, given his level of popularity,
kiss of death for Andy Burnham there.
Yeah, exactly. Might be a strategy of kind of keeping Burnham out, you know.
But he did. I don't think he went. Did he go at all? I don't think he went to Scotland or Wales during the elections. He didn't go at all.
He famously did a press conference at Govan Shipyard, about 20 miles away from one of the Scottish by-elections, but didn't dare kind of cross into the constituency. So you know, I mean, the immigration figures is an interesting one because everybody was taking credit for that today. The Tory ministers were previous Tory ministers.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak said it was all down to him, really, didn't he?
It was all down to them. Suella Braverman even was claiming it was down to her, even though the numbers spiked hugely when she was Home Secretary. So, I mean, everything was, there is an argument to be said that actually Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood were benefiting from some measures put in a couple of years ago, which are finally paying off. But it's certainly not, it was illegal immigration rather than the illegal or irregular immigration. So, it's not the small boats, and that's the real headache.
You're absolutely right. And bring us up to date with what's going on in Makerfield, because we know the Green candidate has withdrawn now after less than a day. More questions about Robert Kenyon as well. We know Restore Britain has a candidate there, as do the Conservatives, and obviously Reform UK, as I mentioned, and Andy Burnham there, as we were talking about, the Monster Raving Loony Party as well. We're not at the stage just yet. We will be after Tuesday. We'll have to read out all the names. But tell us what's happened with the Green candidate and the continuing questions over Robert Kenyon.
I mean, it's an absolute mess out there. Yeah, the Green candidate survived a day, I think, maybe even less than a day. They're saying that he stepped down for family reasons. Obviously hope he's okay, his family's okay, but they're already looking for a new candidate, which is very odd. Robert Kenyon seems to have more deleted social media accounts than most of us have had hot dinners. And, there's increasing questions about that. I saw that on X, in his latest X account, he was doubling down and blaming the mainstream media for attacking him. But
it was interesting actually within that, because they did say that he had a sort of personal Facebook account. He deleted that and then got a kind of counsellor email account. But I mean, there are lots of journalists with good data skills who will find, I'm sure, many of the things that he has put online, and those will continue to come up during this. Is this much of a big deal at the moment, do you think? I mean, it's a controversy, but is it anything more than just a bit of reporting?
I think there is a danger for them, because we saw the kind of far right accusations in places like Bexley really hurt them in the local elections, where they could have made quite significant gains or even won the council. Certainly in places like London. Maybe Makerfield is different. Maybe he's a local lad. He's a councillor there. Maybe people will just see it as kind of London types coming after and sneering after one of their guys. There's always that possibility. But if a far right label sticks, it does tend to put people off, and there's certainly some questions about it. I mean, Andy Burnham didn't have the greatest day. Sorry, he kind of lost his temper with one of my ex-colleagues from my Express days. So he's now at the Mail, Kirsten Calgie. There was some interesting kind of exchanges going on.
Yeah, I was reading about that today. Yeah, what happened there?
Christian claims that he just happened to come across Andy Burnham at some event which Andy Burnham hadn't advertised, and the Manchester mayor kind of lost his temper with him a bit, but but it kind of underlines that things. He's beginning to feel the pressure. I've actually had Labour MPs messaging me in the last few days saying that. Saying Andy's not going to stick up to the scrutiny. He's going to lash out at some point. And in fact, when that happened, I had one of them message me to say, "Yeah, see, I told you."
Right, interesting. The thing with Andy Burnham is, I just don't think he's that good. I just think there's this myth of Andy Burnham. He wasn't a particularly exciting or good health secretary. He is a Westminster insider through and through. He tries to say, "Oh, look at me, I'm so northern, aren't I?" with his, may as well be wearing a flat cap and have a whippet on a lead and talk about the coal in the bath. I mean, the fact is that he was a special advisor. Nothing wrong with that. Some of us have done that ourselves. He was a Labour minister. He was an MP for Lee, but I mean, he knows a lot about Westminster. He is a Westminster insider. Yes, he spent the latter part of his career in Manchester, but it's not as if he's going to bring anything massively new. I don't think he's a particularly good public speaker. I don't think his vision is particularly clear. I don't think what he believes is particularly clear. And I think all of that is going to come out in the next few weeks. And if a lot of the media gets its wish and he becomes Prime Minister, it's going to be the same as Keir Starmer. It's going to be exactly what my friend and mentor Michael Crick said a couple of years ago, where he said, the media, and I don't include you in this, David, because you're fantastic, but so many people not holding him up to the scrutiny. That didn't happen with Keir Starmer in Labour. It's not happening with Andy Burnham now. And, he'll become Prime Minister and people will go, if he does, and people will go, oh, hold on, actually, there's a load of stuff we didn't know or didn't really think about. It's all there. It's all there.
Well, I can tell you that the Independent is certainly planning on applying the scrutiny to him. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I remember Andy Burnham in 2 leadership contests where he was very ordinary.
Yeah, and lost. He lost both of them. He lost to Jeremy Corbyn.
Exactly. But I mean, 2010 was a bit of a flyer, to be fair, against more favoured candidates. But 2015, he had the leadership on the plate and lost it to Jeremy Corbyn and got hammered by Jeremy Corbyn because he was so bland. And, I mean, this is a guy, I mean, it makes me laugh that the left of the party kind of want him so desperately, because this is a guy who brought privatisation to the NHS. And things like that. But no bad thing, actually. I have to say, I'm all for kind of private involvement in the NHS personally, but
but it's not exactly a left-wing health secretary doing that. Yeah,
I mean, he's now saying he's going to stick with Shabana Mahmood's immigration stuff. I mean, you've got to wonder what the guy really stands for, what he's about. I mean, maybe it is just Starmerism with a smile. He's a very good presenter. He's certainly improved in that respect, in my view. I mean, since he became Manchester mayor, his communication skills have shot up scale, and that sometimes happens. But I'm yet to be convinced at all about him. I think there are better candidates in Parliament, but we've got a symptom here of everybody thinks that the Labour MPs are all rubbish and that they need to bring somebody in from outside. And so Andy's their chosen guy.
David, always good to talk to you, and thank you for your common sense and wisdom. That's David Maddox there, he's political editor of The Independent. Thanks to Jane in Milton Keynes, who says, hi Peter, you're looking well this evening. Thank you, Jane, clearly a woman of great taste. Regarding data breaches, I used my credit card at our local garage after filling up. It cost £28. I didn't have to use my PIN, thankfully, as it was a low payment, and used the self-scan checkout. Within 3 hours, some scumbag had cloned my card, spent nearly 200 quid in Manchester. How on earth did they spend over the PIN amount without my PIN number? 3 weeks later, I'm still waiting for the credit card company to contact me. That card is now frozen, and since then I've only used cash, and it's absolutely liberating. Love the show as always. Really interesting on that, Jane. Thank you, and thanks for the compliment. Mary in Cumbria says, I'm elderly and not in favour of digital ID. It's the beginning of a slippery slope. The next thing will be virtual money, virtual wages, etc. Cheers, great show. Thank you, Mary. Mary, always good to hear from you there in Cumbria. And Sue's been in touch and says, please correct me if I misheard, but I thought I heard on the BBC News earlier that Rachel from Accounts said she was going to impose some sort of profit tax on the oil and energy companies again. Surely if that's correct, it's going to be clawed back from the customers, pushing up prices again. I haven't heard that today. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I can't know every single news story. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the top team behind the glass if they can just check that out, whether that would be a kind of windfall tax. I think that probably would have come to my attention, but can we just check what Rachel Reeves has said on oil and gas companies, and I'll come straight back to you after the break, where we take more calls, texts, tweets and voice notes. So stay with us here on Talk.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
To the texter before the break, yeah, you're right, actually. You didn't mishear. I just have this article in front of me here. I wasn't aware of it. I try to keep across all the news, but it's not always possible. Chancellor scraps rules allowing companies to offset UK profits against overseas losses. Rachel Reeves has launched a fresh tax raid on energy giants, including BP and Shell, to fund a 1.8 billion cost of living support. She scrapped a tax rule allowing oil and gas companies to offset profits made in Britain against losses made by foreign subsidies. Cutting the foreign branch exemption is expected to raise hundreds of millions of pounds a year for the Treasury, and the Chancellor said the money would fund a 1.8 billion package of support for families and businesses announced today. So you're absolutely right about that. I completely missed that story. I do apologise, but lots to discuss on digital ID, particularly from Stephen and Greg. Both have contacted me. Greg's in Edinburgh. Good to talk to you again, Greg. Tell me your thoughts on digital ID and the debate we heard a little bit earlier on. What are your thoughts? You're very welcome to the programme this evening.
Oh, it's nice to speak to you, Peter. I was actually quite impressed with your optimism and your faith in the political classes.
Probably just naivety, Greg.
Oh, well, you could possibly say that. I won't comment, but I said, as I said to your producer, I'm sure the good people of Canada didn't think it would ever get to the stage where the access to their data and to their bank accounts in particular.
Yeah, of course. We remember Greg, you're absolutely right. We remember the floppy-haired fascist himself, Justin Trudeau, who with his stupid socks, who said, oh, look at me, I'm also liberal and huggy and wonderful, and oh, look at my silly socks and my silly hair. And actually, he was the one who froze the bank accounts of those truck drivers who wouldn't get the vaccine. Now, I have my vaccines. I've had all my boosters and all the rest of it. I have a tedious medical condition, which means that I'm offered a booster every now and again. But I totally support bodily autonomy. I totally support people who don't want to get either the vaccine or the boosters. And Canada, you're absolutely right. It's a very good example of a supposedly liberal, quote-unquote, society where Justin Trudeau and his fellow fascists were clamping down on people who wouldn't do what they said.
No, I just have no faith whatsoever in politicians in general, that once they've got power over you, they're very, very reluctant to give it back.
The thing as well, though, Greg, within that is they have to be kind of organised. And the thing is that I don't have the faith in them to be that organised. And that's partially why all these data breaches take place as well.
Well, that's true. But my main fear is that it's slowly, it's like a boiling frog. 1 minute, we'll do this, we'll do this, do this, and it's tiny little steps towards. And I know it's hyperbolic to say, we'll have something like the social credit structure that they've got in China, but Canada's an example. And remember, income tax was only ever meant to be a temporary measure to pay for
these are all very good points, Greg. These are all very, very good points, and thank you for them. That's Greg in Edinburgh there. Let's go to Stephen in London, see what he thinks. Stephen, you're very welcome to the programme. What are your views on this?
Hi, Peter. Yes, I'm strongly against digital IDs by the government. People say that, well, if you don't break the law, you have nothing to worry about. Well, the thing is, if government has digital IDs, they'll be able to penalise us for doing things which aren't breaking the law, such as using too much fat, using too much petrol.
Do you really think they're going to do that the way they do in China, for example? Do you really think that's where the government is heading, that we need to be as suspicious as all of this?
Well, I can't be entirely sure they will, and you can't be entirely sure they
Good point.
won't.
Fair
they
point.
shouldn't be given the possibility of doing it. If you said 10 years ago that in the UK you can be arrested at 3 a.m. in the morning for posting on social media, no one would have believed you.
Again, a very good point. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Greg. Great calls this evening. They're all great calls every evening, but particularly this evening has some really, really good contributors. Here's another one. Gary says, what surprises me the most is what VAT is added to. Is there nothing where any government takes their cut? Why have we just sailed along with them, just taking more and more of our after-tax money? With fuel prices, the fuel duty is added, then VAT, so we pay tax on the tax we pay. Please make it make sense. I wish I could, Gary. Lucy says, digital ID is tyranny. I volunteered to help at my local church. I was required to submit absolutely all my personal data to the diocese for a DBS check, that's disclosure and borrowing service, what used to be called a Criminal Records Bureau check. Was then informed by the diocese that unfortunately all my data had been stolen from the DBS checkers. What redress or reassurance do I have? Absolutely none. We have managed perfectly well without digital ID thus far. The intentions behind it can only be malign. This is obvious, says Lucy. Mike in Lincoln says, facial recognition does not solve crime. It identifies individuals who the police are looking for. The police still have to prove whether someone has committed a crime. Yeah, but, you know, they sometimes, I mean, if they're looking for a suspect, they have at least cause. It's not just randomly saying, well, we don't like the look of you, we're going to take you in, Mike. The other issue that Mike continues says, those who are being sought or who are breaking the law all seem to wear face coverings. Well, not all of them, but some of them certainly do. John in Lincolnshire says, social credit won't happen. Neither would being able to go out for a coffee in the park or visit your gran in the care home. Or wait, that was illegal during COVID. Just because you think it's nuts doesn't mean it won't happen. Social media bans for kids are very much in progress already, says John in Lincolnshire. Catherine in Cardiff says, I agree wholeheartedly with Montgomery. The COVID debacle ensured that I will never trust the political class again. It will say anything to elicit our votes, then completely ignore our wishes once in power. No, no, no to digital ID, says Catherine in Cardiff. And Tony in Warrington says, why give us discounts on things that don't need to be discounted? Cut fuel, tax on businesses, regulation, not zoo fees, says Tony in Warrington. And actually, an interesting one from Elisa in Chelmsford as well, who's contacted me to say, I just purchased 2 annual passes, the zoo and the Royal Horticultural Society Hyde Hall. Do I get a rebate from Rachel? I think we both know the answer to that, Elisa, and I fear it is no. Craig is in Yorkshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Craig, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Yeah, hi Peter, good evening. It's just about these kind of, temporary cuts to VAT. I mean, it clearly hasn't been very well thought out, and this is, really typical of Labour. They don't think of second or third order consequences to their decisions. So imagine you're a member of the royal family and you want to go out and take some of your grandchildren to a Pizza Express in Woking. Now, all of a sudden, the pizza outlet has to go and reprint their menus to adjust the pricing on the kids' pizzas, and then 6 weeks later they'll have to reprint them again or get the old menus out of a drawer and put those on the table, make sure they don't mix them up, and update their point-of-sale software to reflect on the prices. And then you could, at lunchtime, as I did today, you could go to Wetherspoons with your colleague and load up some menu items on the app. And what would stop me from ordering 2 children's meals with a VAT rate of 5% applied to them, having them delivered to my table? Because
I sometimes order children's meals, Craig. I sometimes order children's meals, not to get a discount, but just because I'm not that hungry. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen every now and again.
Well, and precisely. So you could do that, and would that be allowed? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And where's the distinction between adults' meals and children's?
It's almost, Craig, sorry to stop you, but it's almost as if, I mean, it's hard to believe, obviously it's basically impossible to believe, but it's almost as if Rachel Reeves hasn't thought this out.
And that's just so typical, isn't it, Peter? They don't think of anything. What they should be doing is helping businesses. They should be, making parking free in all council car parks. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? That would, because around where I live, they got rid of all the free parking bays, which has stopped people just calling in to buy a coffee or do a quick shop on their way out from Ilkley down to wherever they're going. So reinstate the free parking in towns, or make them free for the whole of the summer holidays.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. If you could simply say, right, we're going to make parking in towns, villages, wherever, we're going to make that free. If it's on the street, we're going to make it free. If it's not, obviously residential parking, people need to be able to park there properly. I get that, and they've paid for residential parking and all the rest of it. But that is a really, really good point. If you're going to say we want this to be a good British summer for business, we're going to encourage people into our town centres, those high streets that are having much trouble. I mean, that's a really good idea, Craig. That is a common sense idea that the government just won't do. You know they won't do it. I know they won't do it.
Yeah, they won't do it. And I mean, this is the home of common sense, isn't it? But of course, these Labour clowns, they just don't think strategically. I'm just beside myself. I mean, a friend of mine today, he's in Hong Kong, as you know, I used to live there. So he's coming here with his 4 kids in the summer, and he's saying, my goodness, I'm looking at the price, and as a family, we're not going to be able to go to Tower of London. And I said, well, just do as I did when I took my kids to London. You walk up to it, you say, kids, there's the Tower of London, then you walk somewhere else. We can't afford to go in these places.
It's dreadful when it gets to that. These are lovely places. These are really important parts of our heritage. But when an ordinary person, an ordinary tourist on holiday, or people who live in this country or whoever can't afford to go there, it just says a lot. Listen, great common sense there. Really great call from Craig in Yorkshire. Really appreciate that. Lucy says Reeves's bribes are insulting. How stupid does she think people are? Sarah near Plymouth says, I have never voted for Labour in my life. I've travelled across China. I do not trust any Labour government to introduce digital ID. They're too cosy with Beijing. On digital ID, AJ's been in touch and says this government said it would be to smash the gangs. That lie failed. Now the mask slips and they're pushing it anyway, like toddlers throwing a tantrum. No thanks. Leslie says if Reeves hadn't taxed families to death, there would be no need for her to trumpet these ridiculous freebies. Like free school breakfasts again. Angie says, I live in Portsmouth, but it really annoys me when they keep mispronouncing Makerfield. How hard is it? Not that hard, really, as I found. I hadn't heard of Makerfield before the by-election. Then I heard it. I made sure I knew how it was pronounced, and that was that. It's not a French name like Shahzad or something like that. Leslie says, hi Peter, Leslie here. Hi Leslie. What planet or starman is Motley Crue on? Obviously not the one we live on. I've received 2 messages this evening about Rachel Reeves's hair. I am usually quite reluctant to criticise people's appearances, but I'll read this out from Nat. He says, I see the Labour duo now has a makeover. Starmer now a comedian, and Reeves is a hair model. I will say, Nat, that is slightly nicer than another one which compared Rachel Reeves's previous hairstyle to, shall we say, a Shakespearean and indeed historical figure who you can guess. Lots to discuss in just a second. More about digital ID. We'll take more of your calls right up to 10 o'clock. And if you want to get your call in, now's the time. Use the break to lift the phone. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you want to get your views across on digital ID, on Rachel Reeves, whatever you want to say to me, however you want to say it to me. Give me a ring and we will have a chat. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Catesby has been in touch and says more young people are interested in new mobile phones that do not use Google platforms. Many now use VPNs. We should consider abuse of personal freedom and censorship. Speech is being monitored. Travel through ULEZ, 15-minute towns and pay per mile. The criminals soon bypass facial recognition and ID systems, so the only people monitoring will be you and me, says Catesby, although that's very kind of you to assume I'm not a criminal. John says you must get Michael O'Leary of Ryanair on. I can't wait. He's going to be one happy bunny. Not. I'd love to interview Michael O'Leary. I sort of have a weird grudging admiration for him. He's sort of brilliantly and impressively evil. Becca says the waiting figures have gone down because they're removing people from NHS lists. Starmer must really think we're idiots. And Melanie in Staffordshire says regarding Rachel Reeves's plans, they are great ideas, but some areas do not have many double-decker buses. Bus companies will struggle to fit everybody in, especially the company D&G, says Melanie in Staffordshire. Thank you for that. If you want to get your call in, if you want to get on the air between now and 10 o'clock, there's loads to discuss, whether it is what Rachel Reeves is doing, giving with one hand, taking away the other. We're hearing in the Telegraph tonight about HMRC officials drawing up plans to impose VAT of 20% on top of fees airports charge airlines. What do you think of that? You can also let us know about digital ID or anything else that's on your mind. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. But I want to talk now about a foreign story, but it does have implications here in the UK, and we talk a lot about Israel, and I get criticised a lot on this because of my support for the nation of Israel. I don't always support the Israeli government, and I certainly don't support the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. And there's a horrible video that he, in fact, seems to be proud of, showing him taunting activists kneeling with their hands tied behind their backs. They're not particularly nice people. They're pro-Palestinian activists detained in Israel after their flotilla bringing, as they put it, symbolic aid to Gaza. That means not aid to Gaza, it's just there performatively. It was intercepted, and these hundreds of people have been deported. I don't support them doing that. These are the kind of flotillas that Greta Thunberg was on and so on when she looked so enthusiastic about that turkey sandwich. But that aside, when you take prisoners, when you detain people, I think you do have to treat them with as much dignity as you can. That shows a civilized nation. But the National Security Minister of Israel, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has this video of him taunting them. They're kneeling, they're powerless. He is incredibly powerful as the National Security Minister. Just take a look at this. So he's smiling and taunting these people. He's thinking it's all a big joke and waving his Israeli flag. These are people sort of bending over, being sort of taken out by with their faces on the ground because they're being detained. He's taunting them, he's shouting at them, or raising his voice anyway, and smiling, and essentially using his power. And I think that this is just really unseemly when it comes to this. These people, I don't support them, these pro-Palestinian activists, but I also don't support Itamar Ben-Gvir, the National Security Minister. It's caused quite a sensation in Israel, and of course, there's so many of us here in the UK who want to support the Israeli nation, largely want to support the Israeli government. But when things like this happen, it makes our job harder, and it makes the image of the Israeli government go down in many people's estimation. Now, Itamar Ben-Gvir is not a nice man for many reasons. He is a really far-right person with horrible opinions on many things. Let's find out what's happening in Israel with this, because Noga Tarnopolsky is a veteran correspondent based in Jerusalem, is with me now. Noga, thank you for joining me this evening. Just talk me through this controversy.
Well, it's a huge controversy. Let's discuss for a moment who Itamar Ben-Gvir is, because he's much more than, a radical right-winger. He really is a thug. He's a man who his entire career has been one of a sort of terror. And I don't say that lightly. He was convicted 13 times of hate crimes and terror associations. He was a supporter of the infamous Dr. Goldstein, the Israeli-American physician who, in the early 90s, when Yitzhak Rabin was the Prime Minister of Israel, walked into a mosque in Hebron and murdered some 30 Muslim worshippers. Itamar Ben-Gvir had his photo.
I've actually been to that mosque. I have been to that area in Hebron, and I remember hearing about that, an absolutely horrific attack.
So Itamar Ben-Gvir was a fan of this guy until very recently. He had his photograph on his living room walls. He was someone who incited for the murder of Prime Minister Rabin. He is beyond extremist. The former head of the Mossad, Tamir Pardo, who is no, left-wing activist, he said that Itamar Ben-Gvir and a few other of Netanyahu's ministers of that ilk, he said they're akin to the KKK. I'm quoting. So I think it's important to frame who we're speaking about. In fact, he's considered such a squalid figure that Prime Minister Netanyahu refused to be seen with him in public until late 2022, when suddenly he needed him.
Well, let's get to that, because there'll be a lot of our viewers and listeners thinking, hold on a second, if this guy is so awful, why on earth is he National Security Minister of Israel? But as we know, there are so many ways in politics in this country, as well, this democracy as well as your democracy, Noga, where needs must, and Benjamin Netanyahu needed him to prop up his very wide-ranging coalition.
Right. It's a complex coalition, and I'm very reluctant to refer to it as right-wing, because I think that if we reflect on what Prime Minister Netanyahu's government has done in the last 3.5 years, there's very little that we can consider traditionally right-wing. What we see is a situation in which Prime Minister Netanyahu himself indicted for crimes, who persuaded, using a rather fanciful argument that prospered, that was victorious, he persuaded the Israeli Supreme Court that despite the fact that the law prohibits ministers from serving if they're indicted for crimes, he said that the prime minister is a different sort of figure because he's elected as a party head, and that it would be unconstitutional to prohibit one's election if one is not convicted of crimes. The Supreme Court bought this and allowed it. And as a result, what we have is a fragile prime minister indicted of crimes, who has been on trial now for many years, trying always to delay the trial sessions, trying to delay testimony. And there were very few parties in the Israeli parliament who would agree to sit with him under those circumstances. So he had to go searching in the far reaches of sort of lawless parties. Marginal, in order to be able to hold on to power. And that's created a situation, paradoxically, where this government, despite the catastrophe of October 7th, this government has held on longer than almost every other modern era Israeli government. And it's because these are fragile parties and fragile party leaders who know that without the other, Ben-Gvir without Netanyahu, for example, would fail and would not be reelected. And so this coalition has actually held on and has proved itself to be quite sturdy given the circumstances, because they need each other desperately.
When is the next Israeli election?
Great question.
I've asked it of many Israeli friends of mine, and when someone says you have
what do they say?
Well, they often say good question or great question, which generally means they don't have a great answer or a strong answer. You have an answer, but no one quite knows.
By law, the next election must take place at the very latest by October the 27th of 2026. There's an interesting constellation right now. Netanyahu's coalition, as I was hinting to you, is really unraveling. It's, what we see are, for example, ministers, not just Ben-Gvir. I don't want to go into other ministers because it's a bit in the weeds, but ministers such as Ben-Gvir really taunting the prime minister. Ben-Gvir abused his power against these detainees who, let's add, were deported from Israel with no charges. Even Israel doesn't claim they did anything criminal, unlike the minister himself, who's a convict. But principally, Ben-Gvir is taunting Netanyahu. He's trying to see how badly he can behave before the prime minister would act against him or fire him. So far, Netanyahu is taking it all on the chin. And what this tells us is that the prime minister does not want early elections. But the government lost a bit of that argument this week. A preliminary bill, a bill passed its first reading in Parliament in the Knesset just 2 days ago to disperse the Knesset, to disperse itself. It's likely to pass a second and third reading and become a law next week, and then there would be early elections in Israel sometime between August and September.
Can you give me a sense of how people have reacted to this extraordinary video? Not necessarily politically, but just people in Israel, in Jerusalem or wherever, who have reacted to this. Presumably there's loads of reaction on social media and so on. I know there are loads of people, including a person who, one of our texters earlier on, who said, look, I'm sitting here in Israel watching and listening to this programme. I don't like Ben Gvir. And actually, that's quite a good illustration of how Israel is a democracy and people vehemently disagree, including with people like Ben Gvir.
People do vehemently disagree with Ben Gvir, and it's questionable whether he's actually exercising his powers as minister legally. One of the reasons this government is likely to fall is because at the moment the Supreme Court is hearing arguments about the illegality of his actions as minister, and then Netanyahu could be forced to fire him and the government would fall that way. He's not a popular guy, but he is a provocateur. He's a liar. The interesting constellation this week is that Israelis have gotten used during this endless war to Ben Gvir's abuses against them. For example, there are protesters against the Israeli government, against the Netanyahu government, who have been rotting in jail with no charges against them under some sort of administrative detention of questionable legality for months. Ben Gvir's police, under his orders, have attacked peaceful demonstrators weekly. It's a very difficult situation, but Israelis have sort of been lulled by the fact that it's an internal problem, it's an internal struggle. Now it's become an international scandal. And so now Israelis suddenly have had their eyes open to how shocking this appears when the rest of the world sees what they've been suffering. It's a complicated situation, and I think we're going to have to let the next few days pass, but this story is absolutely still underway. It's not over.
Thank you, Noga. Really interesting to talk to you, and thank you for that analysis there. Noga Tarnopolsky, who is a veteran correspondent based in Jerusalem. I've interviewed her on a number of times on a different station, actually. I fill in on Times Radio from time to time, and she always has great analysis, so excellent to have her on the programme. Debbie's been in touch and says, digital ID is on your phone. They love facial recognition. How do you open your phone? Well, I don't have facial recognition on my phone, actually. I use a code, but there we are. I haven't heard anything from Georgina lately. I hope she's well, says Ernie. I'm not sure Georgina has rung in. She's a regular caller. I don't think I've had her on my show for a little while. I think I heard her on another show the other day, actually. But Georgina, we hope everything is okay with her. I'm pretty sure it is, but thank you for your concern. I mean, we are a community here. We are, people do care about one another, and we notice when people are there or not there. And I got a lovely message, actually. I'll not say who it was, but I got a really lovely email from someone. All I said was, oh, you know, as I sometimes say, you know, let's just pick a name out of the air, Bob. You know, Bob, I haven't heard from you in a while, you know, hope you're well, or something like that. Just a sort of throwaway remark sometime last week, actually. And I got a lovely message from that person saying how actually they had not been able to send in messages because they had a major problems with health of someone in their household, and they were looking after that person, and how, you know, listening to talk and watching talk was something that helped them through that time. And I just, you know, it's such a privilege to do this job. Andy Burnham apparently expected to offer Wes Streeting a role in a future cabinet if he decides not to run against him, perhaps, or if he becomes Prime Minister. This is according to reports again in the Telegraph. We'll bring you more on that, I'm sure, as the evening goes on. Ernie says, talking about digital ID, I read something online that said that Russians cancelled the bank accounts of the families of all fighting age men and women who didn't sign up to fight in Ukraine. The things that a government could do at the press of a button with digital ID is frightening. I don't know if that's true, Ernie, certainly, but interesting to hear it nonetheless. Gary says the government are giving discounts on children's meals. Does this include fast food that they're trying to discourage? Neil says regarding digital ID, if the government makes it compulsory and an individual refuses to have it, what could happen to that individual? If the answer is jail, then it's not too ridiculous to presume they would be used for nefarious reasons. And the last one, before we go to the last break of the programme, Mark says Reeves is going on about these discounts like 10p off a weekly shop. Would this just be absorbed by the supermarkets and never get passed on to the customer, even though it's a pathetic amount anyway? Also, this energy price cap reduction that's meant to last for 3 months, my electric and gas bill has not dropped even a penny. So did this even ever happen, or again just benefited the energy companies and not the consumer? We'll speak to a couple of callers after the break. We'll also find out what's coming up on Ash and Andre's show, which is after 10 o'clock this evening. Stay with us here on Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Your fears about Georgina are unfounded. She was on with Ian Collins this afternoon, I'm reliably informed, so fear not, everything is well with Georgina, one of our regular callers. Peter in Manchester has phoned me a number of times as well. Good to talk to you again, Peter. What's on your mind this evening?
Well, basically, it's just the government is hiding everything and they're not being true.
What are they hiding, Peter? What are they hiding?
They're not being true to what they say they're going to do.
What do you think they said they'd do that they haven't?
Well, they said they're going to reduce immigration, things like that.
I mean, they have. The today 171,000 is the figure. That is a big fall.
No.
It is, though, Peter, it is.
How many people from this country that are British have left?
Well,
that is what people don't understand.
Yeah, you're right. There's immigration and emigration, but those figures are out today, Peter, and they're undeniable. I mean, if we don't trust the Office of National Statistics, who can we trust? Peter, listen, thanks for your call. I just want to squeeze in Ali from Sweden just before I speak to Ash. Ali, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. I'm in Aberdeen now. I came.
Okay, we will update that on our system. Ali is in Aberdeen now. We'll update that.
Yeah, I've been deported from Sweden. I had my own company, and everything was all right in Sweden. But they decided they've hit hardcore in Sweden that they want British people out. They go on about Brexit. So here I am in Aberdeen, and I have to go to the council tomorrow to try and plea for my rights. I've left my business, my home, everything in Stockholm, and I have to go and bleed my guts out to the council in Aberdeen tomorrow, when other people get on the boats tomorrow and they get everything.
Does it? I mean, I'm sorry you're going through this.
I'm sorry. You're so nice and calm.
Don't worry, Ali. Listen, you've been through a lot in the last few weeks, and we appreciate you giving us a ring. Does your experience make you? Obviously, you've made your view very clear there on people coming across in small boats. What about people who come here legitimately? I mean, is that something that you maybe have a bit more sympathy with now because you've sort of gone through it in reverse, essentially?
But I've come here legitimately,
yes,
and I get such bad treatment. It's like beyond belief. It's like I never set foot on the soil of Britain.
Well, listen,
it's horrible, Peter, and everything that's happening in the UK is just disgraceful, and it's horrible.
Well, Ali,
God bless you, Peter.
Well, thank you, Ali.
And listen, at night.
Well, I wish you well, Ali, for everything that's happening tomorrow and in future days as well. You've clearly been through a lot. We've spoken on a few occasions in the last couple of weeks, and I wish you well, Ali, in Aberdeen. And it's a beautiful city. I am a big fan of that area, and in fact Stonehaven, the little village of Stonehaven, is somewhere where my heart lies. I've been there many, many times with my best friend who's from there originally, and I wish you well, Ali, and I hope things get better. Ash, hello sir, how are you?
Yeah, that's very sad, isn't it? And you can feel, you know, it is cultural suicide, isn't it? And you can really, it's really tangible. And I heard the Polish Premier speaking and him saying, well, all these big European capitals have gone really in the big cities, and he saved Poland. And when he talks about all the facts and breaks down all the different empirical data pockets, he's definitely right. And, you know, I don't know how we can reverse it. It's very sad. But anyway,
what's coming up in your programme?
Never mind all that. You can be happy and tune in to Andre and Ash. We've got Lois McClatchy. Yeah, forget all what I just said. Don't get depressed. I mean, it is depressing. Lois McClatchy Miller, the assisted dying bill's coming in. I think we've got Pete Barnes as well coming in, political commentator, and we're going through the papers. Have you seen my suntan from today?
Quite the suntan. It doesn't quite match your
no, the thing is, it's not
neck.
I'm not sure whether it's that or whether because there's no makeup this time of evening I picked up the wrong pot, but never mind, because it's going to be 27 degrees tomorrow, so it should blend in. How was your show, man?
Fine, apart from the fact that I was insulted about my neck. I was told I had
what's wrong with your neck? It's got a beautiful, like a swan. It's like a swan, your
like
neck.
A swan.
Beautiful.
If only it was. If only it was. No, I was accused by someone who should know better behind the scenes that I have not enough of a neck. Anyway, what else is going on in your programme?
Well, a little tip for you. You know, she's given us all